Rest now, my beloved child. Close your eyes and quiet your heart. I am here. Let me take you back to the very beginning. Before light, before breath, before time itself, there was only I am. In the beginning, I created the heavens and the earth. Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. The earth was without form and void. Darkness covered the face of the deep. My spirit hovered over the waters, still, yet alive with power. Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. And then I spoke, let there be light. Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. And light appeared. Golden and soft, it kissed the surface of the waters. It danced across the chaos. I separated the light from the darkness. The light I called day, and the darkness, night. Genesis chapter 1, verse 5. The first day was born, and it was good. There is always light waiting beyond your night. I know how to divide the confusion from the clarity. Trust the process. On the second day, I said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters. Genesis chapter 1, verse 6. And so the skies stretched open above, vast and endless. I called it heaven. Genesis chapter 1, verse 8. Have you ever looked up and felt small beneath the stars? I placed each one with care. Not one falls without my notice. Even the sky declares my love. When you feel overwhelmed, look up. I am higher than your fear. On the third day, I called the dry land to rise. Genesis chapter 1, verse 9. I gathered the waters together. Seas roared into form. The earth stood firm. Genesis chapter 1, verse 10. Then I painted the earth with green, grass soft under your feet, herbs fragrant in your hands, trees bearing sweet fruits. Genesis chapter 1, verse 11. Beauty is not an accident. I filled the world with wonder to delight your senses and soothe your soul. On the fourth day, I placed lights in the heavens, the sun to warm your skin, the moon to calm your nights, and stars to whisper to dreamers. Genesis chapter 1, verse 14 to 16. Let their rhythm guide you. The rising and setting of light is my lullaby. On the fifth day, I filled the waters with life. Genesis chapter 1, verse 20. Whales leapt. Fish darted like silver ribbons. Birds took to the skies in joyful flocks. Genesis chapter 1, verse 21. I blessed them and told them to multiply. I celebrate life. I rejoice in movement and song and flight. So too, your soul was meant to soar. On the sixth day, I created the animals of the land, the lowing oxen, the roaring lion, the small ant, and the great elephant. Genesis chapter 1, verse 24 to 25. Then I created you. Let us make man in our image, after our likeness. Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. I formed you from the dust, sculpted by my own hand. Genesis chapter 2, verse 7. And then I breathed into your nostrils the breath of life. You became a living soul. You are not random. You were dreamed, designed, and loved into being. I looked at all I had made, and it was very good. Genesis chapter 1, verse 31. You are my masterpiece. Rest in that truth tonight. Planted a garden in Eden, a place of peace, abundance, and beauty. Genesis chapter 2 verse 8. Rivers flowed through it. Trees stretched their arms toward the sky. Birds sang in the morning light. In the center, I placed the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Genesis chapter 2 verse 9. I placed you there, not just to dwell, but to care for the garden, to walk among beauty with purpose. Genesis chapter 2 verse 15. I gave one simple boundary. You may freely eat of every tree in the garden, except one. Genesis chapter 2 verse 17. True freedom includes wisdom. Not all things are good to taste, even if they are within reach. Then I said, it is not good that man should be alone. Genesis chapter 2 verse 18. I caused you to sleep deeply, and from your side I shaped the woman. Genesis chapter 2 verse 21 to 22. Bone of your bones, flesh of your flesh. Genesis chapter 2 verse 23. You were united, two souls in harmony. You walked together, naked and unashamed. Genesis chapter 2 verse 25. Love was born not in dominance, but in union. Side by side, you were made to walk. In the cool of the day, I walked with you. My footsteps echoed on soft earth. My voice mingled with bird song. Everything was still. Everything was whole. But the serpent, he was subtle. Genesis chapter 3 verse 1. He whispered questions, planting doubt. He tempted the woman with knowledge that was not meant for you to carry. She reached, tasted, and gave to you. Genesis chapter 3 verse 6. And in that moment, your eyes were opened, but not to glory, to shame. You hid yourselves among the trees. You ran from the one who had only ever loved you. I called, where are you? Genesis chapter 3 verse 9. Not because I didn't know, but because I longed for your return. When you hide in guilt, my voice still searches for you. Always. You clothed yourselves in fig leaves. You blamed one another. You feared me. Yet I did not leave you uncovered. I made garments for you, of skin, soft and warm. Genesis chapter 3 verse 21. I clothed your shame with mercy. I also gave a promise. One day, a child born of woman would crush the serpent's head. Genesis chapter 3 verse 15. Hope was not destroyed in the fall. It was planted like a seed. I sent you out of the garden, yes, but not out of my heart. I placed cherubim at the gate. A flaming sword turned every way to guard the tree of life. Genesis chapter 3 verse 24. The way back was not lost. It would simply take time and love to return. Let your soul be still as we journey deeper into the stories of your beginning. With every breath, you rest closer to my presence. I am always here. Let peace be your pillow tonight. Adam and Eve, having left the garden, found a new beginning in the wide wilderness of the world. In time, they were blessed with sons. Cain, the firstborn, worked the soil, shaping the earth with his hands. Abel, the younger, tended flocks, walking quietly among the sheep. Genesis chapter 4, verse 1. When the time came to bring offerings to me, Abel offered the best portions from his firstborn lambs, pure and without blemish. His heart was open, humble. Cain brought fruits of the ground, but his spirit was clouded with pride. Genesis chapter 4, verse 4 to 5. I looked with favor upon Abel's offering, not because of what he gave, but how he gave it. But Cain became angry. I spoke to him softly. Why are you angry? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not, sin lies at the door. Its desire is for you, but you must master it. Genesis chapter 4, verse 7. Yet Cain allowed bitterness to take root. One day, he led Abel into the field. There, away from all eyes, he struck his brother down. Genesis chapter 4, verse 8. I came to Cain and asked, "Where is your brother?" He answered coldly, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Genesis chapter 4, verse 9. But the earth had already testified. The blood of Abel cried out to me, and I said, "Your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground." I sent Cain away to wander in the land of Nod, east of Eden. But I placed a mark upon him, not to curse him, but to protect him from harm. My child, anger is a seed that grows, if not pulled early. Let no jealousy find root in your heart. Remember, I look not only at what you offer, but at your heart as you give it. Walk in love. Forgive quickly. You are your brother's keeper, and I am yours. And so began the long and steady river of generations. Names passed down like a sacred whisper, echoing through time. This is the book of the generations of Adam, the man I created in my likeness, after my own image. In the beginning, I breathed life into him, and he became a living soul. Genesis chapter 5, verse 1. From Adam came Seth, a son born after the sorrow of Abel, a sign of new hope. Adam lived for hundreds of years, walking the land, tilling the soil, and raising sons and daughters under the rising and setting sun. Then he returned to the dust from which he was formed. The lineage of Adam stretched like roots into the centuries. Each man lived, begot children, and died, yet each name written bore a quiet legacy. Seth begot Enosh, and through him the people began to call on my name again. Generation after generation, my breath continued in them. Canaan, Mahalalel, Jared, all were born and passed, carrying the torch of life. Some walked in silence, others in prayer, but my spirit was always present, hovering over them like wind in the treetops. Then came Enoch. He was different. Enoch walked with me. He didn't rush through his days, or live only for himself. He lived with an ear turned toward heaven, and a heart open to my whispers. For 300 years, he journeyed through life with me, not just in belief, but in deep, abiding friendship. Genesis chapter 5, verse 22 to 24. He listened to my voice in the stillness of the morning and followed my lead beneath the stars. He didn't simply live. He lived with purpose, in constant communion with me. And then, in a moment, I took him. He did not see death. He was not, for I took him home. In a world rushing forward, be like Enoch. Slow down, walk with me. Let each step be a prayer, each breath a moment of trust. You don't need a grand display to please me. You only need to be present, open, and faithful. Even the quiet life shines when it is lived with me. And the line continued. Methuselah, the oldest of all, whose days reached nearly 1,000 years, passed the legacy to Lamech. And from Lamech came Noah, the one through whom a great turning would come. As you drift to sleep, remember, your life is part of a lineage, a story far bigger than yourself. You're not forgotten. You're not lost in the sea of time. I see you. I know your name, and I walk with you. My gaze fell upon the earth, and what I saw pierced me. The world was no longer the gentle garden I had planted. It was filled with cruelty, with darkness, with unkindness growing in every corner. Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. The hearts of men, once tender, had become hard. Every thought, every imagination of their hearts was bent toward evil continually. Their days were soaked in selfishness, in violence, and in pride. The song of the earth had become a sorrowful dirge. I grieved. Yes, I, the creator of all, grieved. My heart was deeply troubled. These children, whom I had shaped with love, had forgotten me. They had forgotten the joy of walking with me. They had turned away. But in the midst of the shadows, I saw a light, a man. His name was Noah. Genesis chapter 6, verse 8. Noah walked with me. In a world that had lost its way, Noah stayed near. He listened. He obeyed. He lived not by the noise of his generation, but by the quiet echo of my voice. My dear one, even if the world grows dark around you, remember, just one heart turned to me can shine like a star in the night. Just one person walking in faith can be the vessel for redemption. So I came to Noah and said, the end of all flesh has come before me. Build an ark, a great vessel of wood and hope. I gave him the measurements. I showed him the vision. The ark would be long, strong, and sealed with care. Every animal, every bird, every creeping thing would come, 2 by 2, and Noah listened. He obeyed with patient hands and trusting heart. He was mocked, laughed at, scorned, but Noah kept building. Sometimes the greatest acts of faith are quiet and steady, building when there is no rain, trusting when others doubt. This is the path of my faithful ones. The days were numbered. A great turning was near, and as Noah built, I waited, for even in judgment, I hoped for hearts to return. Then the day arrived. The sky, once clear and calm, began to shift. Clouds gathered like curtains in the heavens. Thunder echoed softly as I whispered to Noah, enter the ark, you and all your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me. Genesis chapter 7, verse 1. Noah entered the ark, not alone, but with his wife, his sons, and their wives. The animals came as I promised, 2 by 2, every kind of creature, lions and lambs, eagles and sparrows, all entered peacefully, drawn not by instinct alone, but by my silent summons. When all were inside, I myself shut the door, a seal of divine protection. Genesis chapter 7, verse 16. And then the rain came, first as a whisper, then as a roar. From the heavens above and the depths below, waters surged, rivers overflowed, mountains were swallowed. The world was baptized in judgment and renewal. For 40 days and 40 nights, the rain poured without ceasing. But inside the ark, there was stillness, peace. My presence hovered there, as it had in Eden. The ark rocked gently, cradling life in its womb of the wood. My beloved, know this: there will be storms in your life, but when you walk with me, you are never alone in the flood. I am your refuge, your ark, your safe harbor. Rest in me. Outside, the world passed away. Every living thing that moved upon the earth perished, but Noah found favor, and in him, life would begin again. After the rain had fallen, and the world was hushed in silence, I remembered Noah. Genesis chapter 8, verse 1. The winds I commanded began to move gently across the waters. The torrents of the deep closed, and the windows of heaven shut. Slowly, steadily, the waters receded. Hills began to emerge like resting shoulders of the earth. Trees peeked from beneath the waves, and the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat. For months, Noah waited. He did not rush. He trusted my timing. First, he sent a raven, then a dove, and again, a dove. When it returned with a freshly plucked olive leaf, Noah knew life had begun to bloom again. Genesis chapter 8, verse 11. Finally, I said to him, "Come out of the ark, you and your family, and every living thing with you." They stepped out into a cleansed world. The air was crisp. The soil was soft. The sky had cleared. Noah's first act was worship. He built an altar and offered burnt offerings, a fragrant aroma of gratitude. And I made a promise in my heart: never again will I curse the ground because of mankind, even though every inclination of the human heart is evil from childhood. Never again will I destroy all living creatures as I have done. Genesis chapter 8, verse 21. My child, even after storms and seasons of sorrow, know this: renewal will come. Wait with patience, step out in faith, and worship with gratitude. I am the God of beginnings, and I walk with you into every new day. And I blessed Noah and his sons, and said to them, "Be fruitful, and multiply, and fill the earth." Genesis chapter 9, verse 1. The earth was reborn. Every mountain glistened with dew. The trees stretched upward, cleansed by the flood, and the skies above were blue and deep with peace. I gave to Noah a new covenant, a bond of trust between me and all creation. No longer would the earth be judged with such a flood. Life was to be sacred again. Every beast, every bird, every creeping thing would live under my renewed promise. I placed the rainbow in the sky, a gentle arc of color across the heavens, as a sign of my everlasting covenant. Genesis chapter 9, verse 13. Whenever clouds gather and the rainbow appears, remember this: I remember. My mercy endures. I will never again destroy all living things by a flood. My child, when you see the rainbow, breathe deeply. It is more than light and water. It is my whisper to the world. I keep my promises. Even when skies are dark, I am faithful. Noah's family grew and began to fill the earth. But still, the weakness of humanity lingered. Noah planted a vineyard and drank from its fruit. He became drunk, and in his tent lay uncovered. One son, Ham, looked upon his father's shame and spoke of it. But Shem and Japheth walked backward with a covering, honoring their father. There will be moments when others falter. Cover them in kindness. Do not expose their wounds. Honor even the imperfect, for I honor those who walk in humility. I spoke a blessing over Shem and Japheth, and a solemn word concerning Ham. Even as life returned to the earth, my watchful eye remained. The journey of man was far from over. The floodwaters had long receded. The earth, once covered in judgment, now pulsed with the breath of new life. And from the 3 sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the nations were born. Genesis chapter 10. The families spread out across the land, each carrying with them stories, languages, songs, and dreams, woven through the generations like a great tapestry stretching across time and geography. From Japheth came the peoples who settled the coastlands, the isles, and distant territories. The names are many: Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, and others. Each name, though ancient, represents a branch in the great family tree of humankind. Their descendants would become sailors and merchants, nations of seafarers and wanderers, touching the edges of the earth. From Ham, the second son, came powerful civilizations: Cush, Egypt, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. These names would echo throughout history, in both glory and sorrow. From Cush came Nimrod, a mighty hunter before the Lord. Genesis chapter 10, verse 8 to 9. Like Nimrod, they would say, a warrior before the Lord. He was the founder of Babylon, that ancient city that would one day rise and fall with pride. He also built Nineveh, the city that would later hear a prophet's voice and turn its heart toward me. From Mizraim came the ancestors of the great nations of Egypt and neighboring lands. From Canaan, peoples who would later dwell in fortified cities and towers, yet who first walked the fertile valleys of promise. And from Shem, Noah's firstborn and the father of the Semitic peoples, came Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, and others. Through Arphaxad's line would one day come Abram, whose name I would change to Abraham, father of nations. All these were sons, and sons of sons. Their tongues and customs varied. Their paths diverged, but each life, each journey, remained known to me. My child, let these names not lull you into forgetting their meaning. Behind each one is a family. Laughter around fires, work under the sun, prayer whispered under stars. Each human soul is precious to me. Each language, each skin, each voice, I formed them all. And you too are part of this vast family. Your story is tied to theirs. You walk the same earth. You breathe the same breath. You are not alone. You never were. And so, the earth filled once again, not with chaos, but with life. Nations took shape, boundaries were drawn, and the story of mankind continued, step by step. Chapter 11. The Tower of Babel. In the days after the flood, the world spoke with one language and one voice. Genesis chapter 11. The people moved eastward, and in the land of Shinar they settled, unified in purpose and spirit. Come, they said, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. And with bricks for stone and tar for mortar, they turned their eyes upward. Let us build a city and a tower that reaches to the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, they declared, lest we be scattered across the face of the whole earth. But what they did not see, what pride blinded them to, was that true greatness does not rise from stone or ambition. They reached for the heavens, not to worship me, but to exalt themselves. Their hearts, once filled with wonder and gratitude, now burned with self-glory. And so I came down to see the city and the tower they were building. Genesis chapter 11, verse 5. I saw that their unity, though powerful, was corrupted by pride. If left unchecked, nothing they planned would be impossible for them. And I said, come, let us go down and confuse their language, so they will not understand one another. And so I scattered them from there over all the earth. The tower they once built with such boldness now stood unfinished, abandoned, an echo of pride, silenced by the hand of God. The place became known as Babel, because there I confused their language. Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. And so humanity was dispersed, languages multiplied, and the earth grew diverse. My beloved, hear this gentle truth. Ambition, when it forgets its maker, crumbles. Unity without humility breeds only ruin. Yet when hearts are bound by love and reverence, even scattered tongues can sing in harmony. The story of the tower is not only about judgment, but mercy. For in scattering them, I gave birth to culture, to variety, to a symphony of voices that would one day return to sing my praise in every tongue. Chapter 12. The call of Abram. And then, from among the scattered nations, I spoke again, not to a city, not to a tower, but to a man. Genesis chapter 12. His name was Abram, son of Terah, dwelling in the land of Haran. And I said to him, leave your country, your people, and your father's household, and go to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 to 3. And so, without knowing where he was going, Abram obeyed. He was 75 years old, yet he walked with the faith of a child, hand in mind. He took his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions, and they journeyed southward through the land of Canaan. There I appeared to Abram once more and said, to your offspring I will give this land. Genesis chapter 12, verse 7. And there, beneath the open sky, Abram built an altar to me, the Lord who had called him. But the journey was not without trials. A famine came upon the land, and so Abram went down to Egypt to live for a while. There he feared for his life, and asked Sarai to say she was his sister, so that he might be spared. And indeed she was taken into Pharaoh's house. Yet I watched over them both. I sent plagues on Pharaoh's household until the truth was known, and Pharaoh sent Abram away, unharmed, and even blessed with wealth and safety. My child, Listen gently. Faith does not mean the road will be smooth, but that I walk with you through every valley. Even great souls like Abram faltered at times, but I am not looking for perfection. I look for trust. And even when you fear, even when you make missteps, my love does not depart from you. Abram returned to Canaan, carrying more than cattle and silver. He carried a promise, alive and glowing in his soul. Though he had not yet seen its fulfillment, he believed. And that belief was the beginning of a journey that would one day bless all nations. And so, Abram journeyed back from Egypt to the land of Canaan, returning to the place between Bethel and Ai, where he had first pitched his tent and built an altar. Genesis chapter 13. There, in the quiet of the land, he called upon my name again. Abram had become very rich in livestock, silver, and gold, and with him was his nephew Lot, who also had flocks and herds and tents. But the land could not support both of them, dwelling so close together. Quarrels began to stir among their herders. The ground that once offered peace began to tense under the weight of abundance. And so, with grace and wisdom, Abram said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, or between your herders and mine, for we are brothers. Is not the whole land before you? Let us part ways. If you go to the left, I will go to the right. If you go to the right, I will go to the left." Genesis chapter 13, verses 8 to 9. And Lot lifted his eyes and saw the plain of the Jordan, lush and well-watered, like the garden of the Lord, like Egypt. He chose for himself the valley near Sodom and journeyed east. But the people of Sodom were wicked, grievously so, and their hearts far from me. And Abram stayed in the land of Canaan, among the oaks of Mamre in Hebron. And again, he built an altar there to me. My dear one, rest in this thought. Sometimes peace means letting go. Sometimes faith means taking the quiet path, not the greener one. Abram gave up what he could have demanded because he trusted me to provide. And I did. After Lot had gone, I spoke again to Abram. "Lift up your eyes from where you are. Look north and south, east and west. All the land you see, I will give to you and your offspring forever. I will make your descendants like the dust of the earth, so that if anyone could count the dust, then your offspring could be counted." Genesis chapter 13, verses 14 to 16. And so, Abram walked through the land, quietly, faithfully, one step at a time. He did not need to strive. He only needed to believe. In the days of kings and empires, conflict spread across the land. Genesis chapter 14. 4 kings from the east made war against 5 kings in the valley of Siddim, near the Salt Sea. Among them was the king of Sodom, where Abram's nephew Lot had settled. And in the tide of war, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fell. Their cities were plundered, and Lot, along with his household, was taken captive. But a lone survivor fled from the chaos and came to Abram the Hebrew, who was living peacefully by the oaks of Mamre, allied with his neighbors. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken, he rose not with vengeance, but with courage. He gathered 318 trained men from his household, only a small band, and pursued the kings all the way to Dan. In the darkness of night, Abram divided his forces and struck. The enemies were routed. Lot and all the people and possessions were rescued, brought back from captivity, back into light. On his return, Abram was met by a mysterious figure, Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High. And Melchizedek brought out bread and wine. He blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram, by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Genesis chapter 14, verses 18 to 20. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Then the king of Sodom offered Abram a reward. "Give me the people, and take the goods for yourself." But Abram said, "I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, that I will accept nothing from you, not even a thread or a sandal strap, so that you cannot say, 'I made Abram rich.'" Genesis chapter 14, verses 22 through 23. He would receive his reward only from me, my beloved. Remember this: strength is not in numbers, but in righteousness. Deliverance comes not from might, but from faith. When you fight for others, not out of pride, but out of love, I go with you. And when you refuse the glory of men to honor me, I honor you in heaven. Abram walked in peace again, hands empty of spoils, but full of blessing. In the days of kings and empires, conflict spread across the land. Genesis chapter 14. 4 kings from the east made war against 5 kings in the valley of Siddim, near the Salt Sea. Among them was the king of Sodom, where Abram's nephew Lot had settled. And in the tide of war, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fell. Their cities were plundered, and Lot, along with his household, was taken captive. But a lone survivor fled from the chaos and came to Abram the Hebrew, who was living peacefully by the oaks of Mamre, allied with his neighbors. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken, he rose not with vengeance, but with courage. He gathered 318 trained men from his household, only a small band, and pursued the kings all the way to Dan. In the darkness of night, Abram divided his forces and struck. The enemies were routed. Lot and all the people and possessions were rescued, brought back from captivity, back into light. On his return, Abram was met by a mysterious figure, Melchizedek, king of Salem and priest of God Most High. And Melchizedek brought out bread and wine. He blessed Abram, saying, "Blessed be Abram, by God Most High, creator of heaven and earth, and praise be to God Most High, who delivered your enemies into your hand." Genesis chapter 14, verses 18 to 20. And Abram gave him a tenth of everything. Then the king of Sodom offered Abram a reward. "Give me the people, and take the goods for yourself." But Abram said, "I have lifted my hand to the Lord, God Most High, that I will accept nothing from you, not even a thread or a sandal strap, so that you cannot say, 'I made Abram rich.'" Genesis chapter 14, verses 22 through 23. He would receive his reward only from me. My beloved, remember this: strength is not in numbers, but in righteousness. Deliverance comes not from might, but from faith. When you fight for others, not out of pride, but out of love, I go with you. And when you refuse the glory of men to honor me, I honor you in heaven. Abram walked in peace again, hands empty of spoils, but full of blessing. After all these things, a quiet settled over Abram's camp. The stars stretched wide above him. The night was calm, yet questions stirred in his heart. Genesis chapter 15. And then I came to him in a vision and said, "Do not be afraid, Abram. I am your shield, your very great reward." Genesis chapter 15, verse 1. But Abram replied, "Sovereign Lord, what can you give me, since I remain childless? The one who will inherit my estate is Eliezer of Damascus." And I answered with patience, "This man will not be your heir, but a son who is your own flesh and blood will be your heir." Then I brought him outside into the stillness of the night. "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if you can count them." And I said, "So shall your offspring be." Genesis chapter 15, verse 5. And Abram believed me, and I counted it to him as righteousness, not because he performed mighty deeds, but because he trusted me with the deepest longing of his heart. I reminded him gently, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans, to give you this land to take possession of it." Still Abram asked, "How can I know that I will gain possession of it?" So I made a covenant with him, not with mere words, but with sacred ritual. Animals were brought, split and laid opposite each other. As the sun set, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a dreadful darkness came over him. I spoke then of the future, of descendants who would be strangers in a land not their own, oppressed for 400 years. But I promised deliverance. They would come out with great possessions, and Abram would rest in peace, full of years. And then, in the stillness of the night, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch appeared, and passed between the pieces. Genesis chapter 15, verse 17. On that day, I made a covenant with Abram, saying, "To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." My child, know this truth. I do not forget my promises. Even when the wait is long, even when hope fades, my word stands firm. In silence, I am working. In the stars, I speak still. And in faith, even the faintest, I see beauty beyond measure. And Abram, wrapped in the quiet of covenant, rested beneath the stars I had made. Time passed, and the promise lingered unfulfilled. Abram grew older, and Sarai, his wife, remained without child. Doubt crept in like a soft wind, whispering questions into their hearts. Genesis chapter 16. Sarai said to Abram, "The Lord has kept me from bearing children. Go, take my maidservant Hagar. Perhaps I can build a family through her." And so Abram agreed. Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant, became pregnant, but as life grew within her, so did tension. Sarai, once hopeful, now looked upon Hagar with anger, and Hagar, treated harshly, fled into the wilderness, alone, afraid, and unseen. But she was not truly alone. There, by a spring in the desert, the angel of the Lord found her, a divine whisper in the wind, a presence full of compassion. He said, "Hagar, servant of Sarai, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She replied, "I am running away from my mistress Sarai." Then the angel said, "Return to her, and submit to her." And then a promise, firm and tender, "I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." And of the child within her, he said, "You shall name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard of your misery. He will be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." Genesis chapter 16, verses 11 to 12. But for Hagar, the moment was not about conflict. It was about being seen. She gave me a name, El Roy, the God who sees me. And she said, "I have now seen the one who sees me." The spring where she stood was called Bir, Lahai Roy, the well of the living one who sees. And Hagar returned. She bore Abram a son, and Abram gave him the name Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Ishmael was born. And here, beloved, rest in this truth. I am the God who sees. I see the ones forgotten by others. I hear the cries whispered in desert places. No pain is too small, no sorrow too hidden. When you feel lost or cast aside, know I am near, watching with compassion, guiding with purpose, even through the wilderness. And so, under the weight of delay and the ache of longing, the journey continued, each step held in my hand. When Abram was 99 years old, I came to him once more, not in haste, but in holy stillness. Genesis chapter 17. I said to him, I am God Almighty, El Shaddai. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly increase your numbers. Genesis chapter 17, verses 1 through 2. Abram fell face down, his heart trembling with wonder. And I spoke again, This is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many. Genesis chapter 17, verse 5. And I promised, I will make you very fruitful. Nations and kings will come from you. I will establish my covenant as an everlasting covenant between me and you and your descendants after you, to be your God and the God of your descendants forever. In your sleep, rest on this eternal truth. I am a God of promises, not fleeting, but forever. When I speak, it is not an echo that fades. It is a vow etched into the fabric of time and eternity. And I gave Abraham a sign for generations to come, circumcision, a mark of the covenant, a sign in the flesh, a reminder of sacred identity. Then I spoke of Sarai. You shall not call her Sarai, but Sarah, princess. I will bless her, and surely give you a son by her. She will be the mother of nations. Kings of peoples will come from her. Abraham laughed, not in mockery, but in wonder. Will a son be born to a man 100 years old? Will Sarah bear a child at the age of 90? And I replied with divine certainty, Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. Genesis chapter 17, verse 19. I will establish my covenant with him, an everlasting covenant. And even though Abraham asked for Ishmael to be blessed, I did not forget him. I said, I have heard you. I will bless Ishmael too. He will be fruitful and become the father of 12 rulers, and I will make him into a great nation. Genesis chapter 17, verses 20 to 21. But my covenant, my deep, unfolding plan, would pass through Isaac. That very day, Abraham obeyed. He took Ishmael and every male in his household and carried out the covenant as I had commanded him. Dear one, let this settle over you. Faith is not merely belief. It is obedience in the quiet. It is trust when the promise seems delayed. It is changing your name, your walk, your life, because you believe I do not lie. And beneath the stars of the same heavens I once showed him, Abraham rested, not as a wanderer, but as a man chosen, marked, and deeply loved. One warm day, as the sun lingered over the hills of Mamre, Abraham sat at the entrance of his tent. The air was still, and his soul was at rest. Genesis chapter 18. And then he looked up. 3 men stood before him. They were not ordinary travelers, and Abraham, with haste but humility, ran to greet them. My Lord, he said, bowing low, if I have found favor in your eyes, do not pass your servant by. Let a little water be brought, and then you may rest under this tree. Let me bring you food, that you may be refreshed. They agreed. So Abraham hurried to Sarah in the tent and said, Quick, take fine flour, knead it, and bake bread. Then he ran to the herd, chose a tender calf, and had it prepared. He brought curds and milk, and set the meal before them, standing nearby as they ate. And then one of them spoke, Where is your wife Sarah? In the tent, Abraham replied. Then came the sacred promise, I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son. Genesis chapter 18, verse 10. Sarah, listening from the tent, laughed quietly to herself. After I am worn out, and my Lord is old, will I now have this pleasure? But I, the Lord answered, Why did Sarah laugh? Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the appointed time I will return, and she will have a son. Genesis chapter 18, verse 14. My dear one, even when hope has dried like dust, I water it with promise. Even laughter mixed with doubt can be the beginning of joy. Sarah, afraid, denied laughing, but I replied softly, Yes, you did laugh. Then the men rose and looked toward Sodom, and I walked with Abraham to see them off. And I thought, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am about to do? For he will surely become a great and powerful nation. So I said, The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Their sin is grievous. I will go down and see whether they have done as the outcry has reached me. The 2 men went ahead, but Abraham remained standing before me. And in that sacred moment, Abraham, small yet bold, interceded. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? What if there are 50 righteous people in the city? I answered, If I find 50 righteous, I will spare the whole place for their sake. Genesis chapter 18, verse 26. But Abraham continued, carefully, reverently, What if 5 are lacking? What about 45? 40? 30? 20? Each time I answered with patience, For the sake of 20, I will not destroy it. And finally, what if only 10 are found there? And I said, For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. Genesis chapter 18, verse 32. Beloved, let this settle in your soul. I listen to the voice of those who plead for mercy. I hear the cry of compassion. One person's prayer can hold back judgment. Love for others moves my heart. When the conversation ended, I departed, and Abraham returned to his tent under the hush of evening. Evening fell upon the city of Sodom, and 2 heavenly messengers arrived at its gates. Genesis chapter 19. There sat Lot, the nephew of Abraham, waiting with quiet eyes. He saw them and rose at once to meet them. He bowed low and said, "Please, my lords, turn aside to your servant's house. Wash your feet, spend the night, and then go on your way early." At first they said no. They would spend the night in the square. But Lot insisted, gently but firmly. So they went with him and entered his home. He prepared a meal, unleavened bread, and they ate under the flickering glow of oil lamps. But before they could rest, loud voices echoed through the night. The men of Sodom, young and old, surrounded Lot's house. They called out to him with violent demands. "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us." Lot stepped outside and shut the door behind him, trembling. "Please, my friends, do not do this wicked thing." But they pressed harder, threatening him, lunging forward. Then the messengers reached out, pulled Lot back inside, and struck the men outside with blindness, so they could not find the door. Then they said to Lot, "Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons or daughters? Get them out, for we are about to destroy this place. The outcry has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it." Lot hurried to speak to his sons-in-law, who were pledged to marry his daughters, but they thought he was joking. As dawn neared, the messengers urged Lot, "Hurry, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, or you will be swept away." Still, Lot hesitated, and so, in mercy, the men grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and daughters and led them out of the city. Genesis chapter 19, verse 16. For the Lord was merciful to him. Once outside, they said, "Flee for your lives. Don't look back. Don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains, or you will be swept away." Lot begged for a smaller refuge, a nearby town called Zoar. Permission was granted. "Very well. I will not overthrow the town you speak of, but flee there quickly." Then, just as the sun rose over the land, fire and burning sulfur rained down from heaven upon Sodom and Gomorrah. The smoke rose like a furnace. The cities of the plain were no more, but Lot's wife, his beloved, looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Genesis chapter 19, verse 26. My child, this is a tender warning. Sometimes, looking back can bind us to what I have delivered you from. Let go of the past that clings. Step forward into the future I am making, even when it is unknown. Early the next morning, Abraham returned to the place where he had stood before me. He looked down toward Sodom and Gomorrah and saw dense smoke rising. But I remembered Abraham, and I brought Lot out of the catastrophe when I overthrew the cities where he had lived. Later, Lot settled in the mountains with his 2 daughters, afraid to remain in Zoar. They lived in a cave and sorrow and confusion clouded their days. In a tragic misunderstanding, the daughters made their father drink wine, and thinking their family line was ending, each bore him a son. The older daughter's son was Moab, ancestor of the Moabites. The younger son was Ben-Ami, ancestor of the Ammonites. And even through broken choices and shadowed moments, my purposes moved forward. Nothing is beyond my ability to redeem. From ashes, I still raise nations. From the darkest nights, I still call forth light. After the fire and sorrow of Sodom, Abraham moved on. He journeyed toward the region of the Negev, and he dwelled between Kadesh and Shur. Finally, he settled for a time in Gerar. Genesis chapter 20. But once again, fear crept in. Abraham, uncertain of how strangers might treat him, told the people of Gerar that Sarah was his sister. And so Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah and took her into his palace. But I, the Lord, stepped in. That night, I came to Abimelech in a dream. I said, "You are as good as dead because of the woman you have taken. She is married." Abimelech had not gone near her. He cried out, "Lord, will you destroy an innocent nation?" Did he not say, "She is my sister"? And didn't she say, "He is my brother"? I have done this with a clear conscience. And I replied, "Yes, I know you did this with integrity. That is why I kept you from sinning against me. Now return the man's wife, for he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return her, you may be sure, you and all who belong to you will die. Even when others falter in truth, I protect. Even when my children speak in fear, I still cover them. I am the guardian of hearts and the defender of all that is good." Early the next morning, Abimelech summoned his officials and told them what had happened. They were very afraid. Then he called Abraham and asked, "What have you done to us? What wrong have I committed that you brought guilt upon my kingdom? You have done things to me that should never be done." Abraham explained gently, "I said to myself, there is surely no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. Besides, she really is my sister, the daughter of my father, though not of my mother, and she became my wife. And when God made me wander from my father's household, I said to her, 'Show me kindness by saying, wherever we go, that I am your brother.' Then Abimelech gave Abraham sheep and cattle, male and female servants, and returned Sarah to him. He said, 'My land is before you. Live wherever you like.' And to Sarah he said, 'I am giving your brother 1,000 shekels of silver as a sign of your innocence before all.' Then Abraham prayed to me, and I healed Abimelech, his wife, and his female slaves, so they could have children again. For I had closed every womb in Abimelech's household because of Sarah, Abraham's wife." Genesis chapter 20, verse 18. And so, beloved, let this truth rock you into rest. Even in our weakness, I remain strong. Even when your choices are made in fear, I work behind the scenes with grace. I guard you. I go before you. I set things right, not because of your perfection, but because of my promise. My love watches over you, even in foreign lands and fragile moments. And the story moved forward, not broken, but blessed. At last, the time came. The long-awaited promise began to breathe. The silence of waiting gave way to the joy of fulfillment. Genesis chapter 21. The Lord was gracious to Sarah, just as he had said, and the Lord did for Sarah what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant and bore a son to Abraham in his old age, at the very time God had told him. Genesis chapter 21, verses 1 to 2. Abraham named his son Isaac, which means laughter, and he circumcised him when he was 8 days old, just as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old when Isaac was born, and Sarah said, "God has brought me laughter, and everyone who hears about this will laugh with me." Who would have said to Abraham that Sarah would nurse children? Yet I have borne him a son in his old age. Genesis chapter 21, verses 6 to 7. Rest in this, dear soul. Delay is not denial. Even laughter once filled with disbelief can be transformed into joy. When I speak a promise, it will not return empty. My timing may stretch your heart, but it will never break my word. As Isaac grew, the time came for a celebration, weaning the child with joy, but tension stirred. Hagar's son, Ishmael, now older, mocked young Isaac, and Sarah, protective and concerned, said to Abraham, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that slave woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." This distressed Abraham greatly, because Ishmael was also his son. But I said to Abraham, "Do not be distressed about the boy and your slave woman. Listen to whatever Sarah tells you, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. But I will make the son of the slave into a nation also, because he is your offspring." Genesis chapter 21, verses 12 to 13. So, early the next morning, Abraham gave Hagar food and water, placed the boy on her shoulders, and sent them off. They wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water was gone, Hagar placed her son under a bush and walked a short distance away. "I cannot watch the boy die," she wept, "but I heard. Oh, how I hear the cries in the wilderness. The weeping of the desperate does not go unnoticed. No one is ever truly alone in the desert." I called out to Hagar from heaven, "Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift him up. Take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation." Genesis chapter 21, verses 17 to 18. Then I opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water. She went and filled the skin and gave the boy a drink. The boy, Ishmael, grew strong. He lived in the wilderness and became an archer. He dwelled in the desert of Paran, and Hagar found a wife for him from Egypt. Remember this as you rest. I do not abandon the overlooked. I am the God who hears, the God who sees, whether in the house of promise or in the desert of rejection. My hand remains upon every life. Later, Abimelech, the king of Gerar, and his commander Phicol came to Abraham. They said, "God is with you in everything you do. Swear to me that you will not deal falsely with me or my descendants." And Abraham agreed. He brought up a complaint about a well of water that Abimelech's servants had seized. Abimelech said he had no knowledge of it. So Abraham gave him sheep and cattle as a sign of a covenant, and he set apart 7 ewe lambs. "These lambs are a witness," Abraham said, "that I dug this well." and the place was called Beersheba, which means well of the oath. There they made a treaty, and Abraham planted a tamarisk tree in Beersheba, and there he called on the name of the Lord, the eternal God. Genesis chapter 21, verse 33. Let this truth anchor your heart. I am not only the God of sudden fire and parting seas. I am the God of quiet wells, planted trees, and long faithfulness. I am the God who keeps watch over generations. And Abraham stayed in the land of the Philistines for a long time, his heart at peace, his eyes fixed on eternity. Sometime later, God tested Abraham. Genesis chapter 22. He called to him in the stillness of day or night, Abraham. And Abraham replied, Here I am. Then God said, Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Genesis chapter 22, verse 2. What a weight those words must have carried. The son of promise, the laughter of old age. Yet Abraham did not delay. Obedience often begins before understanding. Early the next morning, Abraham saddled his donkey. He took with him 2 servants and his son Isaac. He split wood for the offering, and then they set out. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Genesis chapter 22, verse 5. Did you hear that, little soul? We will come back. Even in surrender, Abraham believed. Faith speaks resurrection into what looks like sacrifice. Abraham took the wood and placed it on Isaac. He carried the fire and the knife, and together, father and son walked on. Isaac spoke, Father? Yes, my son. The fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the offering? Abraham answered, God himself will provide the lamb. Genesis chapter 22, verse 8. And they walked on together. When they reached the place God had shown him, Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, bound his son Isaac, and laid him on the altar. Then he reached out his hand, took the knife. But the angel of the Lord called out from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Genesis chapter 22, verses 11 to 12. Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over, took the ram, and offered it as a burnt offering instead of his son. So Abraham called that place Yahweh Yireh. The Lord will provide. Genesis chapter 22, verse 14. And still, on the mount of surrender, I provide. In your deepest obedience, I meet you with mercy. In the hardest tests, I make a way. I am not the taker of life. I am the giver of life, and I provide the lamb. The angel of the Lord called to Abraham a second time. Because you have done this, and not withheld your son, I will surely bless you. Your descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky and the sand on the seashore. Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you obeyed me. Genesis chapter 22, verses 16 to 18. Then Abraham returned to his servants, and together they went back to Beersheba. And he settled there once again. Sleep tonight, Knowing this, I am the God of the mountain and the ram, the God who walks beside you as you carry the wood, the one who sees your heart and meets your sacrifice with my own. Rest in my provision, rest in my presence, for I will always provide. Sarah lived to be 127 years old, and when she passed away in the land of Canaan, in Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron, Abraham mourned for her. He went to weep beside her and honor the one who had shared his journey. Genesis chapter 23, verse 1 to 2. She was his partner in faith, from Ur to the wilderness, from laughter to promise. And now he stood alone, with love and grief gently folded into his soul. After his mourning, Abraham rose from beside her body and approached the Hittites. He said to them, I am a foreigner and stranger among you. Sell me some land so I can bury my dead. The Hittites replied with kindness, You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will withhold his tomb from you. Abraham rose, bowed before them, and spoke again. If you are willing, let me purchase the cave of Machpelah at the end of Ephron's field. Let him sell it to me for the full price, so that I may bury my wife properly. Ephron the Hittite was sitting among them. He replied, No, my lord, listen to me. I give you the field and the cave that is in it. I give it to you in the presence of my people. Bury your dead. But Abraham insisted. He bowed once more and said, Let me pay the full price. Let everyone witness this properly. Ephron named a price. The land is worth 400 shekels of silver. But what is that between us? Go, bury your dead. Even in grief, Abraham walked in honor. He would not take what he did not earn. Even in sorrow, he upheld peace and dignity. For the faithful heart stays faithful, even when tears fall. Abraham agreed to Ephron's terms. He weighed out the silver, 400 shekels, according to the standard used by merchants. And thus, the field and the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, became his. It was the first piece of promised land Abraham ever owned, not for living, but for rest, not for building, but for remembering. There, in the quiet embrace of the earth, Abraham buried his beloved Sarah in the cave of Machpelah, and in that sacred space, sorrow met peace. A faithful life was honored with a faithful farewell. Grief did not break the covenant. Love endured beyond the grave. The field, the trees, and the cave became his, fully deeded in the sight of all the Hittites. And beneath that ancient sky, beside the oaks of Mamre, Abraham laid her to rest, trusting still in the God of the promise. Abraham was now very old, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. Genesis chapter 24, verse 1. And so, in the quiet of age, with memories behind him and the covenant before him, he turned his thoughts toward his son, Isaac, the child of promise. One day, Abraham called his most trusted servant, perhaps Eliezer, the one who had managed all his affairs. He said, Put your hand under my thigh. Swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the Canaanites, among whom I live, but go to my country and to my own relatives to find a wife for Isaac. Genesis chapter 24, verses 3 to 4. Abraham knew a covenant must be guarded not only in faith, but in future. The lineage of promise must be rooted in faithfulness. The servant asked, "What if the woman is unwilling to come with me? Shall I take your son back to your homeland?" Abraham replied, "No, never take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of that land, will send his angel before you." Genesis chapter 24, verse 7. So the servant made the oath and prepared to leave. 10 camels, gifts, and everything needed for the journey. He set out for Aram Naharaim, to the town of Nahor. When he reached a well outside the town, it was evening, the time when women came out to draw water. Alone, with a great task ahead, the servant paused, not in panic, but in prayer. He said, "Lord, God of my master Abraham, make me successful today. Let it be that when I say to a young woman, 'Please let down your jar that I may drink,' and she says, 'Drink, and I'll water your camels too,' let her be the one you have chosen for Isaac." Genesis chapter 24, verse 12 to 14. Before he had even finished praying, Rebekah came out with her water jar. She was very beautiful, a virgin from the family of Nahor. The servant hurried to meet her. "Please give me a little water from your jar." She said, "Drink, my lord." And she quickly lowered the jar and gave him a drink. Then she added, "I'll draw water for your camels too, until they have had enough to drink. 10 camels, many gallons." Rebekah did not hesitate. Kindness, generosity, and strength flowed from her spirit. The servant watched silently, wondering if this was the answer. When the camels finished drinking, he gave her a gold nose ring and 2 gold bracelets. Then he asked, "Whose daughter are you? Is there room in your father's house for us to spend the night?" She answered, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, who bore him to Nahor. We have plenty of straw and fodder, and room for you to spend the night." Then the servant bowed down and worshipped the Lord. Praise be to the Lord, who has not abandoned his kindness and faithfulness to my master. Genesis chapter 24, verse 27. Rebekah ran home to tell her family, and her brother Laban came out to meet the servant. He welcomed him warmly. The servant entered the house, and before eating, said, "I will not eat until I have told you why I am here." He recounted the story, from Abraham's command to the prayer at the well. He ended with, "Now, if you will show kindness and faithfulness to my master, tell me, and if not, tell me, so I may know which way to turn." Genesis chapter 24, verse 49. Laban and Bethuel replied, "This is from the Lord. We can say nothing. Rebekah is yours, as the Lord has directed." Then the servant bowed again and praised God. He gave gifts to Rebekah, her brother, and her mother. When God's hand is in a matter, peace flows like water, and joy meets generosity. The next morning, they asked Rebekah, "Will you go with this man?" And she answered, "I will go." Genesis chapter 24, verse 58. They blessed her, saying, "May you become thousands upon thousands. May your offspring possess the cities of their enemies." Then Rebekah and her maids mounted the camels and followed the servant. At the same time, Isaac was out walking in the fields near Beer Lahai Roi, meditating at dusk. He looked up and saw camels approaching. Rebekah looked up and saw Isaac. She got down and asked the servant, "Who is that man in the field coming to meet us?" The servant replied, "He is my master." So she took her veil and covered herself. The servant told Isaac everything that had happened. Then Isaac brought her into the tent of his mother Sarah, and he married Rebekah. So she became his wife, and he loved her. And Isaac was comforted after his mother's death. Genesis chapter 24, verse 67. Love, born of prayer, chosen through trust, and sealed with quiet faith. As the sun sets, remember, I guide your steps, even from distant lands. I hear your prayers before they are spoken. I am already at the well, preparing the answer. Abraham, though old and full of years, lived a life of continued purpose. After Sarah's passing, he took another wife, named Keturah. Through her, he had 6 more sons: Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Genesis chapter 25, verse 1-2. Even in his later years, Abraham bore fruit. For those who walk with me, purpose never fades with age. From Jokshan came Sheba and Dedan. From Midian came Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abida, and Eldah. Abraham gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them away to the east, away from Isaac, the son of promise. Genesis chapter 25, verse 6. For though Abraham loved all his children, he knew the covenant rested on Isaac, as I had said. Then came the end of a long, faithful journey. Abraham breathed his last and died at the age of 175. Genesis chapter 25, verse 7. He passed away in peace, an old man, satisfied and full of years, and he was gathered to his people. A life spent trusting me does not end in fear. It ends in fullness, and the journey home is gentle for those who have walked by faith. Isaac and Ishmael, side by side, buried their father in the cave of Machpelah, where Sarah had been laid to rest. After Abraham's death, God blessed Isaac, who lived near Beer Lahai Roi. Even as one generation fades, the blessing continues. The promise does not die with the father. It lives on in the son. Now, the story turned to Ishmael, son of Abraham and Hagar. 12 sons were born to him, 12 princes. Among them were Nebaioth, Kedar, Adbil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedema. Genesis chapter 25, verses 13-15. These became rulers of tribes that stretched from Havilah to Shur, near the border of Egypt and Assyria. Ishmael lived 137 years before he too was gathered to his people. I had seen him in the wilderness. I heard his cry, and I kept my promise to make him a nation. For I do not forget the children of the desert. Now we return to Isaac and Rebekah, who longed for children but remained without. Isaac prayed to me on behalf of his wife, and I answered. Rebekah became pregnant, but the children within her struggled. So she asked, "Why is this happening to me?" And I said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. Even before birth, I knew their destinies, for I shaped not just bodies, but stories. When her time came, she gave birth to twins. The first was red and hairy, like a garment. He was named Esau. The second came out grasping his brother's heel. He was named Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when they were born. As they grew, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open country. Jacob was content to stay among the tents. Isaac loved Esau, for he had a taste for wild game, but Rebekah loved Jacob, Genesis chapter 25, verse 28. Even within families, hearts lean in different directions, but I watch over all, guiding gently through their unique paths. One day, Jacob was cooking stew. Esau came in from the field, exhausted. He said, "Quick, let me have some of that red stew. I'm famished." Jacob replied, "First sell me your birthright." Esau said, "I'm about to die. What good is a birthright to me?" Jacob said, "Swear to me first." And Esau swore an oath, selling his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave him bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank, then got up and left. And so Esau despised his birthright. Genesis chapter 25, verse 34. In a single meal, he traded a future for a moment, a blessing for a bowl. For when we are tired, we are tempted. But what is eternal should never be sold for what fades. Rest now, child of light, knowing I am the God who sees generations rise and fall. I give purpose to the aged, identity to the unborn, and destiny to those who walk with me. There was a famine in the land, not the one from Abraham's time, but a new one. And Isaac, now grown, sought shelter in Gerar, in the land of the Philistines. There, the Lord appeared to him and said, "Do not go down to Egypt. Stay in the land I will show you. Live here as a foreigner, and I will bless you. I will give you all these lands and confirm the oath I swore to your father Abraham." Genesis chapter 26, verses 2 to 3. Even in famine, I provide. Even in uncertainty, my covenant holds. God continued, "I will make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky, and through them, all nations on earth will be blessed, because Abraham obeyed me and kept my commands." Genesis chapter 26, verses 4 to 5. So Isaac remained in Gerar, trusting in the Lord's word. But like his father before him, fear crept in. When asked about Rebekah, Isaac said, "She is my sister." For he was afraid, thinking, "The men of this place might kill me on account of her beauty." Fear can blur our trust, but I am still faithful, even when your courage falters. One day, King Abimelech saw Isaac caressing Rebekah and realized the truth. He confronted Isaac. "She is your wife. Why did you say she is your sister?" Isaac replied, "I thought I might lose my life because of her." Abimelech said, "What have you done? One of us could have taken her, and you would have brought guilt upon us." So he warned all the people, "Anyone who harms this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Genesis chapter 26, verse 11. Despite the famine, Isaac planted crops that year and reaped 100-fold, because the Lord blessed him. I bless the obedient, not only in spirit, but in field. Your faith yields fruit. Even when the soil is dry, Isaac became very wealthy. He had flocks and herds and a large household. But the Philistines grew envious. They stopped up the wells that Abraham's servants had dug. Even Abimelech said, "Move away from us. You have become too powerful." So Isaac moved to the valley of Gerar and reopened the wells his father had dug. He gave them the same names Abraham had used. But when his servants dug a new well and found fresh water, the herders of Gerar quarreled with them, saying, "The water is ours." So Isaac named it Esek, meaning dispute. They dug another, and the quarrel continued. He named it Sitnah, meaning opposition. Finally, they dug a third well. This time no one argued. So Isaac named it Rehoboth, saying, Now the Lord has given us room, and we will flourish in the land. Genesis chapter 26, verse 22. There will be seasons of contention, but peace follows perseverance. I make space for you where once there was strife. From there, Isaac went to Beersheba. That night, the Lord appeared to him again and said, I am the God of your father, Abraham. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. I will bless you and increase your descendants for my servant Abraham's sake. Genesis chapter 26, verse 24. My presence does not depend on place or people. I am with you, wherever you dwell. So Isaac built an altar there, called on the Lord's name, and pitched his tent. Later, Abimelech came to visit him. With a commander and counselor, Isaac asked, Why have you come to me, since you sent me away? They replied, We saw clearly that the Lord is with you. Let us make a treaty of peace. You will do us no harm, just as we have not harmed you. So Isaac prepared a feast, and they swore an oath of peace. That same day, his servants came and said, We've found water. And he named the well Sheba, and the city that grew near it was called Beersheba, meaning well of the oath. From famine to fullness, from exile to blessing, from dispute to peace, my hand was always upon you. Meanwhile, Esau, at age 40, married 2 Hittite women, Judith and Basemath. They were a source of grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Genesis chapter 26, verse 35. Not all choices bless the home, but still, I work my plan through joy and through sorrow. Sleep now, dear one, knowing that even in the dry valley, I prepare a spring. Even in famine, I plant blessing, and even in struggle, I bring you to Rehoboth, the wide place where you will thrive. Isaac had grown old. His eyes were weak, so that he could no longer see. Sensing his time was near, he called for his elder son, Esau, and said, My son. Esau answered, Here I am. Isaac said, I am now an old man and don't know the day of my death. Take your bow and go out to the open country to hunt some wild game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die. Genesis chapter 27, verses 1 through 4. In Isaac's heart was a desire to pass on legacy, but blessings do not always follow human plans. They follow my will. Now, Rebekah was listening nearby. She remembered my word. The older shall serve the younger. So while Esau went out to hunt, Rebekah said to Jacob, Listen carefully. Go to the flock and bring me 2 young goats, so I can prepare tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to him, so he may bless you before he dies. Genesis chapter 27, verses 6 to 10. Jacob hesitated. But my brother Esau is a hairy man, while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him, and would bring down a curse. Rebekah replied, Let the curse fall on me, my son. Just do what I say. Even when motives are mixed and actions uncertain, I am working beneath it all, bringing forth my promise. So Jacob obeyed. Rebekah dressed him in Esau's clothes and covered his hands and neck with goatskins. She handed him the meal, and he approached his father. Jacob said, My father. Isaac asked, "Who is it?" Jacob answered, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Please sit up and eat some of my game so that you may bless me." Genesis chapter 27, verse 19. Isaac was suspicious. "How did you find it so quickly, my son?" Jacob said, "Because the Lord your God gave me success. Even in falsehood, my plans move forward. But remember, truth brings peace. Deceit carries pain, even if the outcome is divine." Isaac asked to touch him. Feeling the skins, he said, "The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau." Still unsure, he asked again, "Are you really my son Esau?" Jacob said, "I am." So Isaac ate and drank, and after the meal, he called him close and kissed him, and then he blessed him. "Ah, the smell of my son is like a field the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." Genesis chapter 27, verses 27 to 29. The blessing had passed, just as I foretold, not through power, but through my will. I choose not by order of birth, but by the heart I see within. As Jacob left, Esau returned with his own meal. He said joyfully, "Let my father sit up and eat of his son's game, so you may bless me." Isaac trembled violently. "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Esau cried out bitterly, "Bless me, me too, my father." But Isaac answered, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing." Esau pleaded, "Isn't there any blessing left for me?" But Isaac said, "I have made him lord over you, and have given him all his relatives as servants." Esau wept, and Isaac gave him this: "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from your neck." Genesis chapter 27, verses 39 to 40. There are blessings and there are consequences, and sometimes the bitterness of loss opens the way for new beginnings. Esau held a grudge. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." But Rebekah heard of his plan and said to Jacob, "Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him until Esau's anger subsides. Why should I lose both of you in one day?" She then told Isaac, "I'm disgusted with these Hittite women. If Jacob marries one of them, my life will not be worth living." So Jacob departed. The road ahead was long, but I was with him, as I am with you. Even in the pain of departure, I plant the seeds of future joy. Rest now, beloved child. In a world of rivalry, I still write stories of grace. In a house of broken trust, I still preserve blessing. And even in the fleeing, I guide gently, with purpose and with love. Then Isaac called for Jacob and blessed him once more. He commanded him, "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your grandfather Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself from the daughters of your uncle Laban." Genesis chapter 28, verses 1 to 2. Isaac spoke again with gentle certainty. "May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May He give you and your descendants blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham. Verses 3 to 4. So Jacob obeyed, and he went out from Beersheba toward Haran. The journey begins, filled with uncertainty, but led by a blessing that cannot be undone. Sometimes, growth begins with a goodbye. Meanwhile, Esau saw that Isaac had sent Jacob away with instructions not to marry a Canaanite. Realizing his own wives displeased his parents, he tried to win favor. He went to Ishmael, his uncle, and married Mahalath, Ishmael's daughter, in addition to his existing wives. But not all attempts to please bring peace. True blessing flows from obedience, not appearances. Now, Jacob was alone on the road to Haran. As night fell, he stopped to rest. With a stone for a pillow, he lay under the open sky, and as he slept, he dreamed. He saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God ascending and descending on it. Verse 12. Above it stood the Lord, who said, I am the Lord, the God of your father, Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. Verses 13 to 15. I visit you in your stillness. My promises do not rest on where you are, but on who I am. You may feel alone, but I am never far. Jacob awoke and whispered in awe, surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven. Verse 17. Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had used as a pillow and set it up as a pillar. He poured oil on it as a sacred act and called the place Bethel, though the city had formerly been called Luz. Then Jacob made a vow, if God will be with me and watch over me on this journey, if he will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. And this stone I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that he gives me, I will give him a tenth. Verses 20 to 22. In the wilderness, Jacob met me. In his dream, he received destiny, and from that stone of rest, he built the beginning of faith. Sleep now, dear heart. You too are watched over. Your steps, your journey, your breath. I am with you. Even when you do not know the place is sacred, it is. And I will not leave you until every promise I have whispered into your soul comes to pass. Then Jacob continued his journey, guided by hope and memory. After many days of travel, he arrived in the land of the eastern peoples, and there in a wide field he saw a well with 3 flocks of sheep lying near it. The well was large, but it was covered with a heavy stone. When all the flocks were gathered, the shepherds would roll the stone away to water their sheep. Jacob asked them gently, my brothers, where are you from? They answered, we're from Haran. Do you know Laban, son of Nahor? Yes, they said. Is he well? He is, they replied. And look, his daughter Rachel is coming with the sheep. Genesis chapter 29, verses 4 to 6. As Jacob looked, he saw Rachel approaching. She was a shepherdess, strong and graceful, leading her father's flock. And in that moment, Jacob's journey came full circle. He had fled from his brother, but now he would find love. Jacob said to the shepherds, "Look, the sun is still high. It is not time to gather the flocks, water the sheep, and take them back to pasture." But they replied, "We can't, until all the flocks are gathered and the stone is rolled away." Just then, Rachel arrived with her sheep. Seeing her, Jacob was moved. He went forward, rolled the stone from the well by himself, and watered her sheep. Strength rises in us, not from pride, but from love. Jacob, weary and alone, found new energy when compassion stirred his heart. Jacob kissed Rachel and began to weep. He told her who he was, Rebekah's son, her cousin. Rachel ran to tell her father. When Laban heard the news, he hurried out to meet Jacob. He embraced him, kissed him, and brought him into his home. And Jacob stayed with him for a month. Then Laban said, "Just because you're my relative, should you work for me for nothing? Tell me what your wages should be." Now Laban had 2 daughters. The older was Leah, and the younger was Rachel. Leah had gentle, weak eyes, but Rachel was beautiful in form and face. Jacob loved Rachel, so he said, "I will work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel." Verse 18. Laban agreed, and so Jacob worked, day after day, year after year, with a quiet heart. So Jacob served 7 years for Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Verse 20. Love makes time gentle. When your heart is fixed on beauty and truth, even the waiting becomes worship. Finally, Jacob said, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to be with her." Laban prepared a great feast, but when evening came, he took Leah and gave her to Jacob instead. Under cover of darkness and tradition, Jacob did not see the switch. In the morning, behold, it was Leah. Jacob cried out, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" Verse 25. Laban replied calmly, "It is not our custom to give the younger before the older. Finish this bridal week with Leah. Then I'll give you Rachel also, if you work for me another 7 years." Deception visited the deceiver. What Jacob did to Isaac, now Laban did to him. The lesson had come full circle, not as punishment, but as shaping. Jacob agreed. He completed the bridal week with Leah. Then Laban gave him Rachel as his wife as well. He gave Rachel a servant named Bilhah, and Leah was given Zilpah. In this house of tangled love and quiet rivalry, I would still work out a destiny greater than they could imagine. Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah, but I, the Lord, saw Leah's pain. She was unloved, but she was not forgotten. When the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. Verse 31. Leah gave birth to a son and named him Reuben, saying, "It is because the Lord has seen my misery. Surely my husband will love me now." She conceived again and bore Simeon, saying, "Because the Lord heard that I am not loved, he gave me this one too." Then came Levi, for she said, "Now at last my husband will become attached to me." Finally, she gave birth to a 4th son and said, "This time I will praise the Lord." So she named him Judah. Then she stopped having children. Verses 32 to 35. "O Leah, rejected by man, but cradled by my love. Through your womb, the line of kings will come. Yes, even the Lion of Judah. Rest now, beloved listener. The story twists and turns. There is love and longing and heartache, but above it all, there is me, working, loving, redeeming. Even through pain, my blessing flows. Rachel watched as her sister Leah bore child after child, and though she was loved, her arms remained empty. Pain rose in her heart, and she cried out to Jacob, "Give me children, or I'll die." Genesis chapter 30, verse 1. But Jacob, troubled, said, "Am I in the place of God, who has kept you from having children?" There are cries even a husband cannot answer. Only the giver of life can heal the ache of the barren soul. So Rachel, desperate and determined, gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a wife, saying, "Sleep with her, so she can bear children for me, and through her, I too can build a family." Bilhah conceived and bore a son. Rachel named him Dan, saying, "God has vindicated me. He has heard my cry." Then Bilhah bore a second son. Rachel named him Naphtali, and said, "I have wrestled with my sister and have prevailed." Verses 6 to 8. Struggle can twist our perspective. Rachel saw rivalry where I was working a plan, yet even her broken words could not stop my blessings. Leah, seeing she had stopped bearing children, gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob. Zilpah bore Gad, then Asher. Leah rejoiced, "What good fortune, and how happy I am." In their striving, a nation was being born. Through longing and rivalry, I was weaving legacy. One day during wheat harvest, Leah's son Reuben found some mandrake plants in the field. He brought them to his mother. Rachel, desperate for fertility, said, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." Leah replied, "Wasn't it enough you took my husband? Now you want my son's mandrakes too." Rachel offered, "Very well. Jacob can sleep with you tonight in exchange for the mandrakes." So when Jacob came in from the fields, Leah met him and said, "You must sleep with me tonight. I've hired you with my son's mandrakes." Verses 15 to 16. That night, God listened to Leah, and she conceived again. She bore Issachar, then later Zebulun, and finally a daughter named Dinah. Even in bargaining and misunderstanding, my mercy flows. I give gifts not based on merit, but on my compassion. Then, after all these years, God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and opened her womb. She conceived and gave birth to a son. She named him Joseph, saying, "God has taken away my disgrace. May the Lord add to me another son." Verses 22 to 24. When the waiting ends, grace speaks. Rachel, once barren, now holds a son of promise. And Joseph will not just be a joy, he will save nations. After Joseph was born, Jacob said to Laban, "Send me on my way so I can return to my homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you." But Laban, seeing that the Lord had blessed him because of Jacob, said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, stay. Name your wages, and I will pay them." Verses 25 to 28. Jacob replied, "You know how I've served you, and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before has increased greatly. But now, when may I do something for my own household?" So Jacob proposed a deal. He would take only the speckled and spotted sheep and goats from the flock, a small, undesirable portion. Laban agreed. But even when the odds seem unfair, I bless those who walk in patience and diligence. Jacob took branches of poplar and almond and plane trees. He peeled them exposing white stripes, and placed them near the watering troughs, so the strong animals would mate before them. The flocks bore streaked, speckled, and spotted offspring, just as Jacob had hoped. Over time, Jacob's herds grew stronger, and he became exceedingly prosperous, with large flocks, servants, camels, and donkeys. Faithfulness in hardship brings fruit. Jacob, once a servant cheated and used, was now walking into overflow. Sleep now, child of God. Even when life feels unfair, when rivalry breaks the peace, my hand works gently beneath it all. From barren hearts, I bring beauty. From deceitful deals, I bring abundance. I never forget the silent prayers. Rest as the story continues. Jacob noticed something had changed. Laban's sons were murmuring jealousy, and Laban's face no longer welcomed him. Then the Lord said, "Return to the land of your fathers and to your kindred, and I will be with you." Genesis chapter 31, verse 3. Jacob called Rachel and Leah to the field. He spoke softly, "Your father has changed my wages 10 times, but God has not allowed him to harm me. He has seen my hardship and the labor of my hands. When people turn their hearts away, God draws near. Even betrayal cannot block his faithfulness." Rachel and Leah agreed. They saw their father's greed and knew their place was with Jacob. So Jacob rose quietly. He gathered his wives, children, and flocks, and slipped away without telling Laban. Before they left, Rachel secretly took her father's household idols. 3 days later, Laban heard Jacob had gone. He chased him for 7 days and overtook him in the hills of Gilead. But the night before their meeting, God warned Laban in a dream, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, good or bad." When Laban reached Jacob, he said, "Why did you run? Why deceive me? Why did you steal my gods?" Jacob replied, "I left in fear, and as for your gods, search everything. If anyone has them, they shall not live." He didn't know Rachel had hidden them. She sat on a camel saddle, with the idols beneath it, claiming she couldn't rise. So Laban searched, but found nothing. Then Jacob grew bold. "These 20 years I've been with you. In the heat of day and the cold of night, I cared for your flocks. If God had not been with me, you would have sent me away empty-handed." Verse 38 to 42. Laban saw Jacob's strength and God's hand upon him, so they made a covenant. A pile of stones was raised, and they swore not to harm each other. Even among tension and broken trust, peace can be made. God protects those who walk in truth. That night they slept on the mountain, and in the morning Laban kissed his daughters and grandchildren goodbye. Then he returned home, and Jacob continued on with peace. As Jacob journeyed on, the angels of God met him. When he saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." Genesis chapter 32, verse 2. So he named the place Mahanaim, meaning 2 camps. But Jacob's heart was troubled. He had heard that Esau, his brother whom he had deceived, was coming to meet him with 400 men. Fear filled him. Even the faithful feel fear. But fear is not failure. It's a moment to cling closer to me. Jacob prayed, "O God of my father Abraham and God of my father Isaac, I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown me. Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I fear he may come and attack me and my family. Verses 9 to 12. A humble prayer is stronger than 1,000 soldiers. That night, Jacob sent gifts ahead: goats, sheep, camels, bulls, and donkeys. Each wave meant to soften Esau's heart. I will pacify him with these gifts, he thought. Perhaps he will receive me kindly. Then, as night deepened, Jacob sent his wives and children across the stream. He remained alone, and there, a man wrestled with him until daybreak. It was no ordinary man. It was the Lord, in mystery and shadow. Jacob would not let go. Even when his hip was struck and dislocated, he clung tightly. "Let me go, for the dawn is breaking," the man said. But Jacob whispered through pain, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." This was no battle of muscle, but of surrender. Sometimes the blessing comes, not through strength, but through holding on. Then the man said, "Your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with men, and have prevailed." Verse 28. Jacob asked, "Tell me your name." But the man only blessed him there. And Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and my life was spared." As the sun rose, Jacob limped away, wounded yet blessed. Those who wrestle with God and cling to Him through the night may walk away limping, but they also walk away changed. Rest now, listener. Like Jacob, may your fears pass through prayer. May your wrestlings birth peace. And even if you limp, may it be because you were touched by God. The morning was still. Jacob looked up and saw Esau approaching with 400 men. He steadied his heart, then arranged his family, the maids and their children first, then Leah and hers, and finally Rachel and young Joseph at the rear. Then Jacob walked ahead, alone, and as he approached his brother, he bowed to the ground 7 times. Each bow was a step of humility, a way of saying, "I am not who I once was." But then Esau ran to meet Jacob. He embraced him, threw his arms around his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. Genesis chapter 33, verse 4. Forgiveness is the miracle that heals what years could not. I was with Esau's heart, softening it, while Jacob feared. Grace was waiting on the other side of apology. Esau looked around and asked, "Who are all these with you?" Jacob said, "They are the children God has graciously given me." Then the 2 camps approached. The maidservants bowed, Leah and her children bowed, and Rachel and Joseph bowed. Jacob urged Esau to accept his gift. "Please take my present. Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God, now that you have received me favorably." Verse 10. Esau resisted, but Jacob insisted. Finally, Esau accepted the gifts. True generosity comes not from riches, but from gratitude. Jacob had nothing when he left, and now he overflowed. Esau offered to travel together, but Jacob, knowing the children and flocks were tender, gently declined. "Let my lord go ahead. I will move at the pace of the children and the herds." So Esau returned to Seir, and Jacob journeyed to Succoth, where he built shelters for his family and livestock. Later, he came safely to Shechem in Canaan. There, he pitched his tent and bought land from the sons of Hamor, and Jacob built an altar there, calling it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel. Verse 20. This was no longer the altar of Jacob the deceiver, but of Israel, the one who wrestled and was changed. A new name, a new walk, a new peace. Sleep gently now. Let forgiveness mend your restless places. Let old fears fade in the light of grace. And if tears come, Let them be like Jacob and Esau's, soft, healing, and full of reunion. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah and Jacob, went out to visit the women of the land. But Shechem, son of Hamor, the Hivite, the ruler of that area, saw her, took her, and violated her. Genesis chapter 34, verse 2. Afterward, his heart was drawn to Dinah. He loved her, spoke kindly to her, and said to his father, "Get me this girl as my wife." Evil often hides behind charm, but I see what's hidden, and I do not forget the cries of the wounded. When Jacob heard what had happened, he remained silent until his sons returned from the fields. Hamor came to speak with Jacob and his sons. He asked that Shechem marry Dinah and offered peace between their peoples. But Jacob's sons, burning with anger, answered deceitfully. Simeon and Levi, full brothers of Dinah, said, "We cannot give our sister to one who is uncircumcised. If all your men become like us, then we will give Dinah in marriage." Hamor and Shechem agreed. They convinced the men of their city to be circumcised, promising shared land and livestock. But on the third day, when the pain was great, Simeon and Levi took their swords and attacked. They struck down every male, including Hamor and Shechem. Rage, though born of pain, brings its own sorrow. Justice belongs to me, not to man's fury. Then the other sons of Jacob came and plundered the city, taking livestock, goods, women, and children. Jacob was horrified. "You have brought trouble on me. The peoples around us will unite and destroy us." But Simeon and Levi replied, "Should he have treated our sister like a prostitute?" Verse 31, the cry for justice must not become thirst for revenge. Even when wronged, there is a path of peace. Let your wounds find healing in me, not vengeance. Now, let your spirit rest. Even when stories are heavy, know that I am near to the brokenhearted, and I carry justice in my hands, not yours. Then God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there. Build an altar to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Genesis chapter 35, verse 1. Jacob knew what he must do. He told his household, "Put away the foreign gods among you. Purify yourselves. Let us rise and go to Bethel, where I will build an altar to the God who answered me in the day of my distress." Returning to me often begins with letting go of idols, of burdens, of the past. They handed over all foreign gods and rings, and Jacob buried them under the oak at Shechem. As they traveled, the terror of God fell on the surrounding cities. No one pursued them. Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, in the land of Canaan. And there, he built an altar and called the place El Bethel, God of the house of God. For it was there God had met him when he fled from Esau. Then sorrow came. Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died. She was buried under an oak below Bethel, and they called the tree Allon Bakuth, the oak of weeping. Even in sacred places, tears may fall. But your sorrow is not forgotten. It becomes part of the holy ground. God appeared to Jacob again and blessed him. "Your name is Jacob, but no longer shall you be called Jacob. Israel shall be your name." Verse 10. And he said, "I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall come from you, and kings shall come from your own body. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I give to you." Then God went up from him. Jacob set up a pillar at the place where God had spoken with him, a stone pillar, and he poured out a drink offering on it. As they journeyed from Bethel, Rachel went into labor, painful, hard labor. As she struggled, the midwife said, "Do not fear, for you have another son." But Rachel's soul was departing. With her last breath, she named him Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow. But Jacob called him Benjamin, son of the right hand. Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem, and Jacob set up a pillar over her tomb. Sorrow may mark the road, but even in death, I make way for new life and legacy. Then Reuben, Jacob's eldest, sinned greatly by lying with Bilhah, his father's concubine. And Jacob heard of it and was deeply grieved. Jacob's 12 sons were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher. These were born to him in Paddan Aram and in Canaan. At last, Jacob came to Mamre, where his father Isaac had dwelt. Isaac lived 180 years, and then he breathed his last. He died and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. His sons Esau and Jacob buried him together. Though they once fought, the brothers now stood side by side in mourning. For death softens pride, and remembrance can unite what anger had broken. Rest now, traveler. Let this chapter settle your soul. A return to God, a farewell to the old, and the birth of new promises, even through pain. This is the account of Esau, that is Edom. Genesis chapter 36, verse 1. Esau took wives from the daughters of Canaan. Adah, daughter of Elon the Hittite, Oholibamah, daughter of Anah, granddaughter of Zibeon the Hivite, and Basemath, daughter of Ishmael, sister of Nebaioth. They bore him sons, Eliphaz to Adah, Roel to Basemath, and Jush, Jalam, and Korah to Oholibamah. These names may seem distant, but they are reminders. No one is forgotten. Every branch of every tree is known to me. Esau took his household, flocks, and all he had acquired in Canaan, and moved to a land away from Jacob, for their possessions were too great for them to dwell together. Verse 7. So Esau settled in the hill country of Seir. He became the father of the Edomites, a nation distinct from Jacob's, yet still within the promise of being made into many peoples. Then follows a record of Esau's sons and grandsons, chiefs of clans. From Eliphaz came Teman, Omar, Zepho, Gatam, and Kenaz. Eliphaz also had Amalek by Timnah. Even Amalek, whose descendants would oppose Israel, came from a story rooted in brotherhood. From Royal came Nahath, Zerah, Shammah, and Mizah. Oholibamah's sons became chiefs too, Jush, Jalam, and Korah. These were the chiefs of Edom, leaders in their clans, each with lands and herds, families and legacy. The chapter continues with a long list of descendants of Seir, the Horite, people who dwelled in the land before Esau. And still, every name is written, even those history may forget. I remember, from Lotan to Zibeon, from Anah to Dishon, from Ezer to Bilah. Their lines are counted. Kings are listed who reigned in Edom, long before any king ruled in Israel. My timing is not yours. One nation may rise early, another later, but each serves its purpose in my grand design. The chapter ends with a final list of the Edomite chiefs, by name, region, and dwelling. This was Esau, the father of Edom. Verse 43. Let this long lineage rock you gently into rest. Even in long lists of names, there is meaning. Even in forgotten people, there is belonging. I see the unknown. I cherish the overlooked. Sleep now, for you too are known. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father had sojourned, and this is the story of his son, Joseph. Genesis chapter 37, verse 1. Joseph was just 17 years old, tending the flocks with his brothers. He was the son of Jacob's old age, born to him by Rachel, the wife he loved most, and because of this, Jacob loved Joseph more than any of his other sons. He made him a richly ornamented robe, a coat of many colors. Love, when shown unevenly, can sow seeds of jealousy. Yet through even those seeds, I work all things for good. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father loved him most, they hated him. They couldn't even speak to him in peace. Then Joseph had a dream. He said to them, "We were binding sheaves in the field, and my sheaf stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to mine." The brothers hated him even more. Later, Joseph dreamed again. "I saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowing down to me." Verse 9. He told this to his father and brothers. Jacob rebuked him gently. "Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow to the ground before you?" But Jacob kept the matter in mind. The dreams I give may seem grand, even foolish, but I am the author of purpose, and I plant visions before they bloom. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers, who were grazing the flocks near Shechem. Joseph wandered in the fields until a man found him and directed him toward Dothan, where his brothers had moved. From a distance, they saw him coming, and they said, "Here comes that dreamer. Let's kill him and throw him into a pit. We'll say a wild animal devoured him. Then we'll see what becomes of his dreams." But Reuben, the eldest, tried to rescue him. "Let's not kill him. Shed no blood. Throw him into this pit in the wilderness, but don't lay a hand on him." He hoped to later deliver Joseph back to their father. So when Joseph arrived, they stripped him of his colorful robe and threw him into a dry pit. Then they sat down to eat. Hatred can be casual, but I do not overlook the cries of the innocent in hidden places. As they ate, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead on their way to Egypt. Judah said, "What profit is it if we kill our brother? Let's sell him to these traders. After all, he is our brother." And so they pulled Joseph out of the pit and sold him for 20 shekels of silver. The traders took Joseph to Egypt. Even in betrayal, I am present. Though Joseph was sold, I was buying his future. Reuben returned to the pit, and Joseph was gone. In anguish, he tore his clothes. They took Joseph's robe, dipped it in goat's blood, and brought it to their father. Jacob recognized it. "It is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph is surely torn to pieces." And Jacob wept. He tore his garments, put on sackcloth, and mourned many days. No one could comfort him. He said, "I will go down to the grave in mourning for my son." Grief blinds us to the story I am still writing. While Jacob mourned loss, I was preparing salvation. Meanwhile, in Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, the captain of the guard. And so ends this chapter, not with joy, but with a quiet unfolding. A dreamer cast down, a family broken, And yet, the dream was never lost. Sleep now, knowing that even when life feels unfair, I am still moving the pieces. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with a man of Adullam named Hira. Genesis chapter 38, verse 1. There, Judah saw the daughter of a Canaanite man named Shua. He took her as his wife, and she bore him 3 sons, Onan, and Shelah. Judah chose a wife for named Tamar. But was wicked in my sight, so I took his life. I see what no one else sees. Justice may be swift, but never without reason. Then Judah said to Onan, "Go into your brother's wife. Raise up children for him." But Onan, knowing the child would not be his, spilled his seed on the ground. He acted selfishly, refusing to fulfill his duty. And so, I took his life also. Responsibility abandoned brings harm to others. I call you to love beyond yourself. Judah then said to Tamar, "Live as a widow in your father's house until Shelah grows up." But he feared that Shelah might also die, so he never gave him to her as husband. Tamar waited and waited. Much later, when Judah's wife had died and his mourning ended, he went up to Timnah to shear his sheep. Tamar heard he was coming. Seeing that Shelah had grown and was not given to her in marriage, she took off her widow's clothes, veiled herself, and sat by the road. Judah, not knowing it was her, thought she was a prostitute. He said, "Let me come in to you." She asked for a pledge, his seal, cord, and staff. He gave them, and she conceived by him. Later Judah sent a young goat to retrieve his pledge, but the woman was gone. When truth is hidden, justice will still rise in time. 3 months passed, and Tamar was found to be pregnant. Judah said, "Bring her out, let her be burned." But Tamar sent back his seal, cord, and staff, saying, "I am pregnant by the man who owns these." Judah recognized them, and he said, "She is more righteous than I, since I did not give her to my son Shelah." Verse 26. Even the flawed can see truth. Even the guilty can be humbled and made right. When her time came to give birth, there were twins in her womb. As she labored, one baby reached out a hand, and the midwife tied a scarlet thread around it, saying, "This one came out first." But then the hand withdrew, and the other baby came out instead. He was named Perez, and his brother, with the scarlet thread, was named Zerah. From Perez would come kings, and later, the Messiah. Out of a messy story, I brought the line of salvation. Sleep now, beloved listener. Even in scandal and shadows, I am at work. The story may not be tidy, but my purpose never fails. Joseph was taken down to Egypt, and there he was bought by Potiphar, an Egyptian officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Genesis chapter 39, verse 1. But the Lord was with Joseph, and he became successful in the house of his Egyptian master. Potiphar saw that the Lord blessed all Joseph did, and so he made him overseer of his house. Even in slavery, Joseph honored me, and in dark places, my light shone brighter through him. From the moment Joseph was made steward, The Lord blessed the Egyptian's household for Joseph's sake. Fields, flocks, and household all prospered. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance, and after a time Potiphar's wife cast her eyes upon him and said, "Lie with me." But Joseph refused. He said, "My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God?" Verse 9. Temptation will come, but you are not alone. When you honor me, even when no one sees, I see. Day after day, she pressed him, but Joseph did not listen. One day, when he went inside to work and no one else was there, she caught his cloak and said again, "Lie with me." But Joseph fled, leaving his garment in her hand. Flee from sin, even if it costs you everything. Better to lose a robe than lose your soul. Angry and scorned, she called the household and lied. This Hebrew tried to lie with me, and I screamed. Look, he left his garment beside me. She kept his cloak beside her until Potiphar returned, and she told him the same. Potiphar's anger burned, and he threw Joseph into prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But even there, the Lord was with Joseph and showed him steadfast love. Verse 21. He gave him favor in the sight of the prison warden, who soon put Joseph in charge of all the other prisoners. Whatever Joseph did, the Lord made it succeed. The world may strip away your position, but it cannot steal your calling, even behind prison walls. I prepare my servants. You may feel forgotten, but I am writing something eternal. Now, let your heart be still. Joseph was cast low, but not abandoned, wronged, but not ruined. In the silence of the prison, I was near. Sleep in that same promise. Sometime later, two of Pharaoh's servants, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, offended their king. Genesis chapter 40, verse 1. Pharaoh was angry, and he had them imprisoned in the house of the captain of the guard, the same prison where Joseph was confined. And there, Joseph attended them. Even when forgotten by the world, we are never without purpose. Serving others in quiet faithfulness is still holy work. One night, both the cupbearer and the baker had dreams, different dreams, but both were troubled. When Joseph came to them in the morning, he saw they looked sad. "Why do you look so down today?" he asked. They said, "We both had dreams, but there's no one to interpret them." And Joseph replied, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Verse 8. The chief cupbearer said, "In my dream, I saw a vine with 3 branches. It budded, blossomed, and ripened into grapes. I took the grapes, squeezed them into Pharaoh's cup, and placed it in his hand." Joseph said, "This is the interpretation. The 3 branches are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position. You will once again place the cup in his hand." And Joseph gently added, "But when all goes well with you, remember me, mention me to Pharaoh, and bring me out of this prison. I was taken from the land of the Hebrews, and I have done nothing to deserve being here." Verses 14 to 15. Even the faithful feel longing. It is no sin to hope, to ask, to yearn for release. Seeing the good interpretation, the chief baker also told his dream. "I had 3 baskets of bread on my head. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but birds were eating them out of the basket. And Joseph answered solemnly, "This is the interpretation. The 3 baskets are 3 days. In 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole. The birds will eat your flesh." Truth is not always comforting, but it is necessary. And even in hard news, my presence abides. 3 days later, it was Pharaoh's birthday. He gave a feast for all his servants. He restored the chief cupbearer, just as Joseph said, but the chief baker was executed, and the cupbearer, he forgot Joseph. Verse 23, forgotten by man, but never by me. Now, as the night deepens, let this truth settle gently over your soul. There are seasons when you are faithful in quiet places, and yet your name is not remembered. But I remember, in my time, not one dream, not one word, not one moment is wasted. Sleep in peace. Two full years passed. Genesis chapter 41, verse 1. And then Pharaoh dreamed. In his sleep, he stood beside the Nile River. Out of the river came 7 sleek, fat cows, grazing among the reeds. Then came 7 ugly, thin cows, and they devoured the 7 fat cows, but remained as thin and hollow as before. Pharaoh awoke. Then he slept again, and dreamed a second time. 7 heads of grain, full and good, grew on a single stalk. Then 7 thin and scorched heads sprang up after them and swallowed the good ones. Pharaoh awoke again, troubled and restless. Sometimes I speak through dreams, and even rulers must pause when I whisper in the night. In the morning, Pharaoh called for all his magicians and wise men, but no one could interpret the dreams. Then the chief cupbearer remembered. "Today, I am reminded of my shortcomings," he said. "When Pharaoh was angry with me, and the chief baker, we each had dreams, and a young Hebrew, Joseph, a prisoner, interpreted them, and it all came to pass. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph. He was quickly brought from the dungeon. He shaved, changed his clothes, and stood before Pharaoh. Pharaoh said, 'I have had a dream, and no one can interpret it, but I have heard it said that you can.' Joseph replied, 'I cannot do it, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he seeks.'" Verse 16, humility opens the door for greatness. Joseph did not claim power, but gave me the glory. Pharaoh told Joseph both dreams, and Joseph, with calm wisdom, said, "Both dreams have the same meaning. God has revealed what he is about to do. The 7 good cows and 7 good heads of grain are 7 years of abundance, but they will be followed by 7 years of famine, so severe that the abundance will be forgotten." Joseph continued, "Let Pharaoh appoint a wise man to store up grain during the years of plenty, so Egypt may survive the famine." Pharaoh and all his officials were pleased, and Pharaoh said, "Can we find anyone like this man, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Verse 38, he turned to Joseph. "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise. You shall be in charge of my palace. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." And so, Joseph, once a forgotten prisoner, became ruler over all Egypt. In one day, everything changed. In one breath, the waiting ended. Pharaoh gave him robes of fine linen, a gold chain, and his own signet ring. He rode in a royal chariot, and people bowed before him. Pharaoh gave him an Egyptian name, Zaphanath-Paneah, and a wife, Asenath. daughter of a priest. Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh. For 7 years, the land produced abundantly. Joseph stored up grain in vast quantities. During this time, Asenath bore him 2 sons. The first he named Manasseh. It is because God has made me forget all my trouble. Verse 51. The second he named Ephraim. It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering. Verse 52. Out of sorrow came joy. Out of waiting came reward. Then came the 7 years of famine, and people cried to Pharaoh for food. Pharaoh said, "Go to Joseph. Do what he tells you." And Joseph opened the storehouses and sold grain to all the Egyptians. The famine spread to all the world, and from every land people came to Egypt to buy from Joseph, whom I had prepared. Beloved one, even your delays are part of my design. Even your silence is heard. Sleep now in peace. Your life, too, may feel paused, hidden, or uncertain, but I am weaving something wise and wonderful. Now the famine had spread through Canaan, and Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt. So he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so we may live and not die." Genesis chapter 42, verse 2. And 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to Egypt to buy grain. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's younger brother, for he feared something might happen to him. Grief leaves a cautious heart. Jacob, still mourning Joseph, clings tightly to the last child of Rachel. Now, Joseph was governor over the land. He was the one who sold grain to all its people. When his brothers arrived, they bowed down before him, with their faces to the ground. Joseph recognized them, but they did not recognize him. And then he remembered the dreams he had about them. Your sheaves bowed down to mine. Genesis chapter 37. Joseph spoke harshly. "Where do you come from?" "From Canaan," they answered, "to buy food." But Joseph said, "You are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected." They replied, "No, my lord. We are honest men. We were 12 brothers, sons of one man. The youngest is with our father, and one is no more." Joseph insisted they would not leave unless one stayed behind, and the youngest brother was brought to Egypt. He put them in custody for 3 days. Even justice pauses for mercy. Joseph was not driven by vengeance, but by longing. On the 3rd day, Joseph said, "Do this and live, for I fear God. Leave one of your brothers here in prison, and take grain back to your starving households. But you must bring your youngest brother to me." Then they said to one another, "Surely we are being punished because of our brother. We saw his distress when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen." Reuben said, "Didn't I tell you not to sin against the boy? But you wouldn't listen. Now we must give an account for his blood." They did not know Joseph understood them because he was using an interpreter, and Joseph turned away and wept. Verse 24. Forgiveness is not weakness. Even strength must cry before it can heal. Joseph chose Simeon and had him bound before their eyes. He gave orders to fill their sacks with grain, to return their silver, and to give them provisions for the journey. As they camped that night, one brother opened his sack and found his silver returned, and their hearts sank. "What is this that God has done to us?" they asked. Guilt stirs even where grace is given. The path to peace begins with a trembling conscience. They returned to Jacob in Canaan and told him everything. When they opened their sacks, each man's pouch of silver was inside. Jacob was dismayed. "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more. Simeon is no more. And now you want to take Benjamin." Reuben said, "You may put both of my sons to death if I do not bring Benjamin back. Entrust him to me." But Jacob said, "My son will not go down with you. If harm comes to him, I will die of sorrow." And so, fear held love in place. But the story is not over. Sleep now, gentle one. There are chapters yet to unfold, and even broken things will be made whole. The famine was still severe in the land. When the grain they had brought from Egypt was gone, Jacob said to his sons, "Go back and buy us a little more food." Genesis chapter 43, verse 2. But Judah replied, "The man warned us solemnly, 'You will not see my face again unless your brother is with you. If you send Benjamin, we will go. If not, we cannot.' Israel, to Jacob, protested, 'Why did you bring this trouble on me by telling him you had another brother?' They answered, 'He questioned us closely. Could we know he would say, "Bring him down"?' Then Judah stepped forward and said, 'Send the boy with me. I myself will guarantee his safety. If I do not bring him back, I will bear the blame all my life.' Courage grows, not in ease, but in responsibility. Judah, once careless, now offers himself for the sake of his father's heart. Jacob finally agreed. 'If it must be so, take him. Take double the silver and the best gifts of the land, balm, honey, spices, and myrrh. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Verse 14. Surrender is not giving up. It is giving over. In releasing what we most fear to lose, we allow grace to move. The brothers returned to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin, he said to the steward of his house, "Take these men to my home, slaughter an animal, and prepare a meal." The brothers were afraid. "It's because of the silver in our sacks. He wants to overpower us and take us as slaves." But when they tried to explain to the steward, he answered gently, "Don't be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure. I received your silver." Then Simeon was brought out to them. They were taken into Joseph's house, given water, and their feet were washed. When Joseph came home, they presented their gifts and bowed down before him. He asked, "Is your father well? The old man you told me about?" "Yes, he is alive and well," they replied. Then Joseph saw Benjamin, his own mother's son. He said, "Is this your youngest brother, the one you told me about? God be gracious to you, my son." Verse 29. And Joseph hurried out, deeply moved. He went into his private room and wept. Love, long buried, rises like a tide. Tears are the soul's most sacred language. After composing himself, he returned and served them a feast. They were seated according to their birth order, and they looked at each other in astonishment. Portions were served to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much. They feasted and drank freely in his presence. Mercy prepares a table even before we understand. Love often hides in plain sight, waiting for the heart to see. Sleep now, beloved. In your waiting, trust. In your fears, surrender. And in the kindness yet unknown, find rest. Joseph instructed his steward, "Fill the men's sacks with as much food as they can carry, and put each man's silver back in his sack. But in the youngest one's sack, put my silver cup, the one I drink from and use for divination." Genesis chapter 44, verse 2. Sometimes the heart must be tested to prove it has changed. What may look like a trap is, in my hands, a tool of truth. At dawn, the brothers set out with their donkeys. But before they had gone far, Joseph said to his steward, "Go after them. When you catch them, say, 'Why have you repaid good with evil? The cup my master drinks from is missing.'" The steward overtook them and said these words. The brothers replied, "Why would we steal? If any of us has the cup, let him die, and the rest of us will become your slaves." They quickly lowered their sacks to the ground and opened them. The steward searched them, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. The moment of testing comes when the cost is greatest. What we choose next reveals our soul. The brothers tore their clothes in anguish. Each man loaded his donkey, and they returned to the city. They threw themselves before Joseph, and Joseph said, "What is this you have done? Don't you know a man like me can find things out by divination?" Judah answered, "What can we say? How can we prove our innocence? God has uncovered your servant's guilt. We are now your slaves." But Joseph said, "Far be it from me to do that. Only the one who was found with the cup will be my slave. The rest may go home in peace." Then Judah approached Joseph and said, "Please, my lord, let your servant speak. We told you we had an aged father and a younger brother, born to him in his old age. His brother is dead, and he is all that is left of his mother's children. If he leaves his father, our father will die of grief." He continued, "I guaranteed the boy's safety. Please let me remain as your slave instead of the boy. Let Benjamin return with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? No, do not let me see the misery that would come on my father." Verse 33 to 34. And there it was, the change Joseph longed to see. Judah, once the brother who consented to Joseph's slavery, now offers himself in place of another. Love redeems, honor restores, grace waits, and then welcomes. Sleep now, dear soul. Even in the hardest tests, my hand is near. Sometimes the story seems heavy, but it is always moving toward reunion, toward forgiveness, toward light. Then Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." So there was no one with Joseph when he made himself known to his brothers, and he wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard him, and Pharaoh's household was told about it. Genesis chapter 45, verse 2. Joseph said to his brothers, "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" But his brothers were not able to answer him because they were terrified at his presence. Then Joseph said, "Come close to me." When they had done so, he said, "I am your brother Joseph, the one you sold into Egypt. But do not be distressed, and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. What men intend for harm, I use for healing. My purpose weaves through pain, drawing good from what seems lost." Joseph continued, "For 2 years now, there has been famine in the land, and 5 more years will remain without plowing or harvest. But God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance." Verse 7. "So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, lord of his entire household, and ruler of all Egypt. Forgiveness sees farther than memory." Joseph's pain was real, but so was his calling. Joseph told them, "Now hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Do not delay. You shall live in Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds. I will provide for you there, because 5 years of famine are still to come." Then he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his shoulder. And he kissed all his brothers and wept over them. Reconciliation is not forgetting, it is remembering with peace. Tears are holy when they wash away bitterness and make room for love again. When Pharaoh heard that Joseph's brothers had come, he was pleased and said, "Tell your family to come. I will give them the best of the land of Egypt." So Joseph gave them wagons, supplies for the journey, and clothing. But to Benjamin he gave 5 sets of garments and 300 shekels of silver. And to his father he sent 10 donkeys loaded with the best of Egypt. As he sent his brothers away, he told them, "Do not quarrel on the way." Verse 24. Even in joy, wounds need tending. Joseph reminded them, peace must live on, even as they go. So they returned to Canaan and told their father, Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt. Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when he saw the wagons and heard all Joseph had said, the spirit of Jacob revived. And Israel said, "It is enough. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." Verse 28. Hope returns in old age, and joy rises again, even from the shadow of despair. Sleep in peace now. This is the chapter of return, of tears that cleanse, of words that restore, of love that waits patiently for the right time to be revealed. O Israel, Jacob set out with all that was his, and when he reached Beersheba, he offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in a vision at night, saying, "Jacob, Jacob." And Jacob replied, "Here I am." Then God said, "I am God, the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for there I will make you into a great nation. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." Genesis chapter 46, verses 3 to 4. When you face a new land, remember, I go with you. I go before you. I go within you. Then Jacob left Beersheba, and his sons put him, their children, and their wives in the carts Pharaoh had sent. They took with them their livestock and possessions, and all the people of Jacob's line, sons, grandsons, daughters, and granddaughters. Faith is not always a solitary path. Sometimes the whole family must move into the unknown together, trusting that grace has already made a place Now, these are the names of the sons of Israel who went to Egypt: Jacob and his descendants, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, and Zebulun, the sons of Gad and Asher, and the children born to them, the sons of Dan and Naphtali, the children of Joseph, who had been born to him in Egypt, Manasseh and Ephraim, and the youngest, Benjamin, with 10 sons of his own. In total, 70 members of Jacob's family went to Egypt. Joseph went and told Pharaoh, "My father and brothers have arrived from the land of Canaan with their flocks, herds, and all they own. They are now in Goshen." He chose 5 of his brothers to present before Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked them, "What is your occupation?" They replied, "Your servants are shepherds, as were our ancestors. We have come to live here for a while, because the famine is severe in Canaan, and there is no pasture for our flocks." Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Let them settle in the best part of the land. If any of them have skill, put them in charge of my own livestock." Genesis chapter 47, verse 6. When my hand is upon you, even strangers show you favor. I open doors no one expects, quietly, perfectly, and in time. Then Joseph brought his father Jacob in to meet Pharaoh. Pharaoh asked him, "How old are you?" Jacob answered, "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and difficult have been the years of my life, and they do not equal the years of the lives of my ancestors." Verse 9. Then Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from his presence. A man who walks with me carries blessing wherever he goes, even in the presence of kings. So Joseph settled his father and brothers in Egypt, giving them property in the best part of the land, in the region of Ramesses, as Pharaoh had directed. He also provided them with food, according to the number of their dependents. When the world withholds, I provide. When hunger rises, I sustain. I do not forget those who trust in me. Now the famine was severe. The people of Egypt and Canaan had spent all their money buying grain, and they came to Joseph saying, "Give us food. Why should we die before your eyes?" Joseph said, "Bring your livestock, and I will give you food in exchange." And so they did: horses, sheep, cattle, and donkeys. The next year, when no money or livestock remained, they came again and said, "Buy us and our land in exchange for food. We and our land will be Pharaoh's servants. Give us seed that we may live and not die." Verses 18 to 19. So Joseph bought all the land in Egypt for Pharaoh, and the people became servants of the crown. But he did not buy the land of the priests. They had their own allotted food from Pharaoh. Joseph then said, "I have bought you and your land today for Pharaoh. Here is seed for you to sow the land. 1/5 of your harvest will belong to Pharaoh. The rest is yours." Verse 23 to 24. The people responded, "You have saved our lives. May we find favor in your eyes. We will be Pharaoh's servants. In desperate times, my wisdom creates order. Though the world trembles, I bring structure, safety, and care." Meanwhile, Israel, Jacob, settled in Egypt, in Goshen. They acquired property and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived there 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. As the end of his life drew near, he called for Joseph and said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will not bury me in Egypt. But when I rest with my fathers, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." Joseph said, "I will do as you say, And Jacob replied, "Swear to me." And Joseph swore to him. Then Israel worshipped, as he leaned on the top of his staff. Verse 31. The end of life is not the end of promise. Those who walk with me die with hope, and their legacy lives on. Sometime later, Joseph was told, "Your father is ill." So he took his 2 sons, Manasseh and Ephraim, to visit his father. When Jacob was told, "Your son Joseph has come to you," Israel rallied his strength and sat up in bed. And he said to Joseph, "God Almighty appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan, and there he blessed me. He said, 'I will make you fruitful and increase your numbers. I will give this land to your descendants as an everlasting possession.'" Genesis chapter 48, verses 3 through 4. Then Jacob said, "Now, your 2 sons born to you in Egypt before I came, Ephraim and Manasseh, shall be mine, just as Reuben and Simeon are mine. The blessings of the Father are not merely traditions, but seeds sown into the future." As Joseph brought his sons near, Jacob's eyes were dim with age, but his heart burned with affection and memory. He said, "I never expected to see your face again, and now God has allowed me to see your children too." Verse 11. Joseph removed his sons from Jacob's knees and bowed down with his face to the ground. He brought them forward, Manasseh, the elder, to Jacob's right hand, and Ephraim, the younger, to Jacob's left. But Jacob crossed his hands, placing his right hand on Ephraim's head and his left on Manasseh's, and he blessed Joseph, saying, "The God before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has delivered me from all harm, may he bless these boys." Verses 15 to 16. Even when eyes grow dim, the spirit sees clearly. The greatest vision comes not from sight, but from trust. Jacob continued, "May they be called by my name, and the names of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and may they increase greatly on the earth." When Joseph saw that his father placed his right hand on Ephraim, he was displeased. He said, "No, my father, this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head." But Jacob refused, saying, "I know, my son, I know. Manasseh will become a people, and he too will be great. Nevertheless, his younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." Verse 19. And he blessed them that day and said, "In you shall Israel bless," saying, "May God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." Then Jacob said to Joseph, "I am about to die, but God will be with you and take you back to the land of your ancestors. And to you I give one ridge of land more than to your brothers, the one I took from the Amorites, with my sword and my bow." Verse 22. Then Jacob called for his sons and said, "Gather around, so I can tell you what will happen to you in days to come. Assemble and listen, sons of Jacob. Listen to your father Israel." Genesis chapter 49, verses 1 to 2. There is a sacred hush when a father speaks the final words, for what he leaves behind is not only land, but legacy. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, the first sign of my strength, excelling in honor, excelling in power. But turbulent as the waters, you will no longer excel. Verses 3 to 4. Because he defiled his father's bed, his position was given away. Great beginnings need steady hearts. The The strength of the start means little, if not carried in humility. Simeon and Levi are brothers. Their swords are weapons of violence. Let me not enter their counsel. Verses 5 to 7. Because of their fierce anger and cruelty, Jacob declares their descendants will be scattered. Anger may roar like a lion, but it leaves behind ruins. The wise learn mercy. The strong learn restraint. Judah, your brothers will praise you. Your hand will be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. Verse 8. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until he to whom it belongs shall come. Verse 10. From Judah will come kings, eventually the Messiah himself. From humble beginnings come royal destinies, and from a shepherd tribe, the Lion of Judah will rise. Zebulun will live by the seashore and become a haven for ships. Verse 13. Some are called to the coastlines, to welcome the wandering and to anchor the lost. Issachar is a raw-boned donkey lying down between two saddlebags. Verse 14. He saw that rest was good, but became burdened, submitting to forced labor. The gift of rest can become bondage when comfort replaces calling. Dan will provide justice for his people. Verse 16. He will be a serpent by the roadside. Verse 17. And Jacob suddenly prays, I look for your deliverance, O Lord. Verse 18. Even in judgment, grace is close. And when we see the serpent's shadow, we long for the light. Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. Gad will be attacked by raiders, but he will attack them at their heels. Verse 19. Asher's food will be rich. He will provide delicacies fit for a king. Verse 20. Naphtali is a doe, set free that bears beautiful fawns. Verse 21. Some bring victory, others abundance, and some the poetry of life. Joseph is a fruitful vine whose branches climb over a wall. Verse 22. Though he was attacked, his bow remained steady because of the hand of the mighty one of Jacob. Verses 23 to 24. Jacob showers him with blessing, blessings of the heavens above, blessings of the deep, blessings of the breast and womb. Verse 25. For those who have suffered, I give abundance that overflows. What was stolen, I restore. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he devours the prey. In the evening he divides the plunder. Verse 27. Some are warriors by design, fierce in justice, swift in action. These are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father said as he blessed them, each with the blessing appropriate to him. Verse 28. Then Jacob gave final instructions. Bury me with my fathers in the cave of Machpelah, where Abraham and Sarah are buried, where Isaac and Rebekah rest, and where I buried Leah. Verses 29 to 31. Home is not always where you die, but where your soul remembers its covenant. When Jacob finished giving these instructions, he drew his feet up into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Sleep now, beloved, the Father has spoken. The story continues, but the voice of Jacob rests, and the promises he carried now live on in the sons, in the people, in the promise. Then Joseph threw himself on his father Jacob, wept over him, and kissed him. There is no shame in grief. It is love's final gift, tenderness given without words. Joseph ordered the physicians to to embalm his father, a process that took 40 days. And the Egyptians mourned for Jacob 70 days. When the days of mourning were over, Joseph asked Pharaoh's permission to bury his father in Canaan, in the cave Jacob had spoken of, the cave of Machpelah. Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father, as he made you swear to do." So Joseph went up to bury his father, accompanied by all Pharaoh's officials, his family, and his brothers. Even chariots and horsemen joined them, a great procession. At the threshing floor of Atad, they lamented with a very great and sorrowful lamentation. It was so profound that the Canaanites said, "The Egyptians are holding a solemn mourning." Thus, the place was named Abel Mizraim. There are moments when even nations pause for sorrow, for a man of God has passed into the promise. Then Joseph and his brothers buried Jacob in the cave, in the field of Machpelah, near Mamre, the tomb of Abraham and Isaac. Joseph's brothers fear him after the burial. They returned to Egypt. But now, with their father gone, Joseph's brothers grew afraid. They said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. Say to Joseph, 'Forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly.'" When Joseph heard this, he wept. Then his brothers came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph replied, his voice gentle, without anger, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis chapter 50, verse 20. So then, don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children. And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is divine. And in the quietest voices, the greatest healing is spoken. Joseph's final days. Joseph stayed in Egypt with his father's family. He lived to be 110 years old and saw the third generation of Ephraim's children, as well as the children of Machir, son of Manasseh. Then Joseph said to his brothers, "I am about to die, but God will surely come to your aid and take you up out of this land to the land he promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob." And Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, "When God comes to your aid, you must carry my bones up from this place." Even in death, faith reaches forward. Joseph did not cling to Egypt, but to the promise of God. So Joseph died at the age of 110. They embalmed him and placed him in a coffin in Egypt. And so the book of Genesis ends, not with despair, but with a hope that outlives the grave, a hope rooted in promises, whispered long ago under stars, fulfilled in quiet obedience, and passed down gently from heart to heart. Let your spirit rest, for the story is only beginning.